hot, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel that already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 3 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. A major breaking ongoing incident in Nottingham. 3 people dead, 3 others injured, 1 man in police custody. Here is a map of the timeline of events as we understand them so far. 2 bodies found in the streets, then a van being used to hit 3 pedestrians, then another body found in the street, and all of that culminated in this arrest, which I can show you some footage of now. GB News eyewitness said she heard what sounded like gunshots before seeing a man being tasered and put in the back of a police van. It's a developing story. We're expecting to get some reaction from the police, but I will be all over this with our fleet of reporters who are out there across the scene. We've got Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, and Jack Carson, who's on the scene. We're also going to be talking back here in Westminster with Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, for the political reaction. Loads more to come. Talk of armed raids taking place at properties as we speak, and more armed police on the streets. We will give you up-to-the-second updates on a major breaking story that has gripped Nottingham and the nation. Yes, absolutely. We're just going to give you over to the headlines now. You can email it gbnews@gbnews.com.
Patrick, thank you and good afternoon. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Our main story this afternoon, counter-terrorism police are working with the force in Nottinghamshire following an attack which left 3 people dead. 2 bodies were found in the early hours of the morning before a van was used to run down 3 people. The 3rd body was found later. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Nottinghamshire Police believes the separate incidents are linked and say they're keeping an open mind over the motive. Kane Brady, who lives in the area, told us he saw an arrest being made.
Woke up to shouts of armed police, and what I said earlier sounded like some very large commotion, sounded like gunshots. Honestly, it was that loud. We looked out the bedroom window and I saw tasers. I saw a man being dragged out, pinned to the floor. I saw him getting arrested. Who was trying to resist. I then later saw, when they opened the van, I saw a large knife being pulled out, and then straight away, that's when the police then closed off both roads, both Maple Street and Bentinck Road.
Here's what we know so far. Just after 4 o'clock this morning, police were called to Ilkeston Road, where the bodies of 2 people were found. They then attended another incident on Milton Street following reports a driver in a van had tried to run over 3 people. They're now being treated in hospital. Another victim, a man, was later found dead in Magdala Road. Forensic teams are now at the scene on Magdala Road collecting evidence. Earlier, a large tent was erected, shielding a smaller one at the site. Armed officers, some wearing balaclavas, could be seen on Balfour Road, a few hundred yards from the main cordon. They entered a commercial property on the street and 2 young women were eventually put into the back of a marked car. Police then appeared to rush to a separate location further down the road, quickly cordoning off an adjoining street. Well, in other news, 2 police officers have been served with gross misconduct notices in connection with the deaths of 2 teenagers in Cardiff. Kyrese Sullivan and Harvey Evans died last month, shortly after they were seen on CCTV footage riding electric bikes being followed by a police van. The police regulator says their conduct doesn't mean disciplinary proceedings will follow. The first public hearing in the COVID-19 inquiry is now underway. The initial stage is focusing on whether the country was properly prepared. A solicitor representing the bereaved families for justice says today marks the end of a 2-year battle. A video sharing the experiences of some of those who suffered most during the pandemic was played to the inquiry.
The most you can hope is to give your loved one a good death, and we will forever carry the guilt that our daddy was denied that.
I'm angry. I need questions answered. I'm just still hurt and I'm still upset.
And the time that he needed me most, I wasn't there. And I felt guilty about that, even though it wasn't my fault.
Homeowners are being warned of further interest rates hikes after the latest data showed wages have risen at their fastest rate on record post-pandemic. It puts more pressure on the Bank of England as it tries to curb inflation. Wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.2% higher in the 3 months to April. Unemployment also unexpectedly fell. A mother and her partner have been convicted over the death of a 9-year-old boy. Alfie Steele had 50 injuries on his body and was found submerged in a bath at their home in Droitwich in Worcestershire. Carla Scott was found guilty of manslaughter and Dirk Howell was convicted of his murder. The victims of a suspected double murder in Stoke-on-Trent have been named by police. 7-year-old Elizabeth John and her 11-year-old brother Ethan were found unresponsive with significant injuries in a home on Sunday. The schools of both children have paid tribute to them, describing them as kind, caring, with impeccable manners. A 49-year-old woman is in custody after being arrested on suspicion of murder. Former US President Donald Trump will appear in court today in Miami, Florida. Mr. Trump faces 37 charges of mishandling classified documents and is accused of unlawfully keeping US national security material. He's the first current or former president to face criminal charges. You're with GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people were found dead in Nottingham this morning. GB News has exclusive pictures of the suspect being arrested. 2 people were found dead in the street in Ilkeston Road in Nottingham just after 4 a.m. this morning. A 3rd man was then found dead in Magdala Road. Another 3 people are in hospital after someone tried to run them over in a van in Milton Street in what police believe is a connected incident. One of those in hospital is in a critical condition. We are awaiting a police press conference, which we will do our best to get to you as soon as we possibly can. Loads of unanswered questions at the moment with this major ongoing breaking incident. Talk of other armed raids taking place around the city, more armed police being deployed. The police are keeping an open mind, but are working with counter-terror officers as well. Any developments, this is the place to be. Let's speak now to GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White, who is on Milton Street, which is where the 3 people were hit by a van. Mark, what's the latest where you are?
Well, still fast-moving events, really 11 hours after these incidents unfolded. Of course, Milton Street, as you say, where I am, we now know that of the 3 people that were injured in an apparent attempt by this van to run them over, 1 man is in a critical condition in hospital, 2 others less seriously injured. But as we speak, there are police operation searches that are underway elsewhere in Nottingham, up in Ilkeston Road, where 2 people were found stabbed to death, and also in Balfour Road, just near Ilkeston Road. We've seen police armed operations there searching properties, not unusual in the hours after such a serious incident as this, where the police once they get to know a bit more about who their suspect is, then raid the home address linked to that individual. And of course, family and friends' addresses will also be visited by the police. Anywhere where this individual might have worked could also be the subject of a police arrest as they try to gather as much information as possible, Patrick, and determine whether this was, as they suspect, an isolated incident or whether there could be other individuals that knew of this or maybe planning similar. What they're saying with regard to the motive at the moment is that they're keeping an open mind, so they haven't as yet ruled out terrorism potentially as a cause. And in fact, the Chief Constable, Kate Maynell, has issued a statement just in the last half hour. She says this is a tragic series of events which has led to the lives of 3 innocent people being taken and left another member of the public in a critical condition in hospital. My thoughts are with all the families affected by this shocking incident, and we'll be working extremely hard, she says, to understand exactly what happened. She goes on to say we are at the early stages of the investigation and need to determine the motives behind these attacks, and we'll keep the public updated as soon as we're able to do so. But she says as part of that, Patrick, we're keeping an open mind as we investigate the circumstances surrounding these incidents and are working alongside counter-terrorism policing to establish the facts, as she said you would expect them to do in such circumstances. So although this is not, we understand, being led by Counter-Terrorism Command at the moment, they are working alongside the local detectives as they piece together exactly what the motivation of this individual may have been.
Absolutely, and we are very much live from the scene. Mark, stay there, because I want to bring some shots now of Ilkeston Road, which is where just after 4 a.m. this morning, 2 people were found stabbed to death in the street. And what you're looking at right now is forensic police officers combing through the scene using what appears to be shovels to potentially go through some guttering there. There is a big police cordon in place, and that is, as we understand it, where it all started. And Mark, I'm just going to get you to talk, because I think we keep this in vision, because they are kind of dredging places at the moment. They're dredging what appears to be guttering, potentially a manhole as well. That's at least 3, again, it would appear to be anyway, forensic officers there. And Mark, this is one of the reasons why they've kept up the police cordons in so many different areas around Nottingham, because there are so many different locations where multiple incidents happen, but also absolutely vital to gather as much forensic detail as possible, Mark.
Yeah, you're dead right. That's exactly why so many parts of the city centre have been cordoned off and will remain cordoned off for some considerable time. So those forensic officers in their usual attire, of course, of the white suits and coverings usually over their boots as well, they are at the end of this street, of Milton Street as well, where the van ran into those pedestrians on the street, and at other locations. What you have now, after, of course, at 4 o'clock this morning and in the minutes after that, was very much the emergency response to an unfolding set of terrifying attacks that took place here, up there on Ilkeston Road and on Magdala Road as well, that resulted in those 3 deaths and 3 others injured. That was a fast-time police response to that, which then followed, of course, as they were piecing together all of the information, Patrick, that was being relayed to them by members of the public and trying to identify in quick time a suspect. They managed to do that. Then we had, of course, the arrest of that suspect as caught dramatically and exclusively on camera for GB News, showing the armed officers that had surrounded and stopped a white van, then with the suspect on the ground. We're told by an eyewitness who spoke to GB News earlier that officers recovered a large knife from inside that van. That's not been confirmed to us by the police as such, but that's certainly what this eyewitness saw, and we've no reason to doubt their particular story. And in conjunction with that sort of, methodical stage of the investigation now, the forensic examinations are what is a real-time, fast-paced investigation running in tandem with that, which is the, getting up to speed with who this man was, where did he live, who was his girlfriend or other family members that might have known him, might have had an idea what he was about to do.
Mark, I'm just going to cut in, Mark. Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to talk over what people watching us on TV or online will be able to see right now, and I'll go back to you, Mark, which is that forensic officers are packing things into bags, quite large packages, it must be said, and are taking those away in forensic bags. And that is the road, Ilkeston Road, just to remind people, where just at around 4 a.m. this morning, 2 people were found dying in the street, believed to be from stab wounds. Efforts to resuscitate and revive those people, sadly, in vain. But it's also the road where we're getting reports, Mark, that there were some raids taking place, armed police kicking down the door of a property on that road before emerging, according to reports, Mark, with 2 women this afternoon. That's according to a local resident. And that, I think, Mark, is what you're alluding to, isn't it? Which is that as this investigation continues and forensic services are sweeping the streets, such as at Ilkeston Road, they will be looking for whoever was in connection with this man and whatever the situation may be, keeping an open mind as to whether or not it is terror-related. But that road is where it all started, Mark.
Yes, that's right, and you're seeing the forensic teams there taking away their bags of evidence. You've got to remember what we have at the scene. You think it's maybe just a sterile scene in terms of a stabbing, but there are all the samples, of course, that they will have picked up, but also clothing from individuals as they're worked on by paramedics, all of the associated bandages and medical kit that the paramedics just get about their business in trying to save lives and then cast to the side. All of that is evidence and has to be collected, bagged up, and then taken for further examination to really help the police piece together a proper idea, a moment-by-moment account of how events unfolded, and exactly the same process happening further up this road on Milton Street and on Magdala Road as well. And as you were talking about there, the armed police operations at other addresses, bearing in mind what's happened, Patrick, with these stabbing attacks and vehicle-borne attack further up this street, they are going to, with an abundance of caution, have armed police on all of these raids. Now, it might be family members, friends, associates, but the police don't know until they've gained access, entered a particular property and been able to assess what the potential threat is. Remember, those individuals that go off and attack people, sometimes they also lay booby traps in their home addresses. There's a past pattern of events like this in the past. So that's why when the police enter properties, they have to go equipped, they have to do it with the utmost caution to make sure that they're safe and that members of the public are safe. And then, as you say, 2 women from one of the addresses put into the back of a vehicle and probably taken off for questioning. Again, this is not unusual when they will in the first instance arrest family members or friends of a suspect. These people usually turn out to be witnesses, people that have given statements to police rather than suspects. But in the first instance, anybody connected to this man has to be treated as a suspect.
Mark, thank you very, very much. That's Mark White there from Milton Street, which again I want to emphasise is the scene where this van was used to hit at least 3 pedestrians. One individual there is, we believe anyway, in a critical condition. As yet, 3 people dead, 3 other people injured, 1 of them critical, and 1 man, 31-year-old, in police custody, being held on suspicion of murder. We are expecting some kind of police conference to come probably within the next couple of hours or so make sure that you watch this space. But I'm just going to read you the latest from Nottinghamshire Police, who say they are keeping an open mind about the motive of the attacker and are working alongside counter-terrorism police, as is normal, they say, in these circumstances. Joining me now is former Met Police officer Graham Wetton. Graham, thank you very much. It's great to have you on the show. Look, when you look at a situation like this, do you think it has the hallmarks of terror, or are they right to keep an open mind?
No, they're right to keep an open mind. I think that you look at various factors, and Mark alluded to that in his report. The time of day doesn't lend itself to the type of terror attack we've seen before. So I think every police officer, every investigator will tell you have to keep an open mind for every investigation until you can actually categorically come out and say this is being labelled as whatever it is. So they're completely right to wait until they confirm it up. They need to look into the background of the suspect they got arrested, any motivation, anything that was said, websites they've looked at, associates, etc., before they can come out and say exactly what the motive is for this attack or these attacks.
Yeah, now we are hearing reports of armed raids taking place, a couple more people being taken away by police. We'll have more detail on that as we get it. But also, again, in the last few moments, I'm just reading the live reports here of more armed police on the streets of Nottingham. And as well, when you couple that with large-scale multiple police cordons still in place right around the city at loads of different locations, what do you read into the fact, Graham, that there are now more armed police on the street?
I think they're just putting their resources out so they can actually secure the city centre, secure the areas. Again, speculation, but we don't know whether they've got everybody they're looking for. There may be other associates they're still looking for. There may be other people linked to the suspect they've got in custody. There may be associates, intelligence reports. There's a whole load of work going on in the background here into the person they've got detained, the victims of the assaults themselves, and see actually what the background is. So there could be a number of reasons why they're deploying extra additional resources in. They could be getting ready to even go and search some more premises. So for me, this is like normal. It's slow time, normal business for policing in dealing with such a major incident as we're seeing.
Yeah, spread across multiple different locations and police dealing with what was, as it appears anyway, a marauding city attack. But, Graham, you've alluded to some of the tactics that the police are going to be doing. I've just had an update here from Ben Bradley, who's a Conservative MP and also, I believe, as well on Nottingham City Council. He will presumably be in regular contact with the police and possibly be getting a little bit more information than most people who are on the scene at the moment. What he says is that he believes that he is confident that they've arrested who they need to arrest. So what will be going on with that individual now? Because, Graham, yes, OK, I'm impatient. I'm in the news industry. A lot of our viewers are impatient as well. But there does appear to be a heck of a long time here without any police press conference. So what will the police be doing now? They'll be going through his phone. They'll be speaking to his relatives. Will they? Talk me through it.
And bear in mind what time this happened, about 4 a.m, the first call. The arrest made about 5 a.m. Normal practice would be once you detain someone and bring them in, they are entitled to have a rest period. You can't, unless it's for urgent reasons, and you can do an urgent interview, but there are guidelines around those. But normal practice would be they would be booked into the custody suite and then basically put into a rest period because they could have been up all night. And it's then fair, unjust, etc., to interview them so quickly for a lengthy period of time. So normally you would put them into some form of rest period. So again, we're looking at maybe 6 to 8 hours from 5 a.m, takes them to around 1 or 2 o'clock. So we're already eating into the time where we are now. We're sitting here just after 3. The first real interview, proper interview, is probably only taken place maybe an hour or so ago. You then got to wait for a solicitor to turn up, do a consultation with their client, and then be ready for an interview. The police are also gathering as much evidence as they can before that initial interview. So, you know, it seems like a long time in your form of business. For me, that looks like almost it's normal core business for policing in dealing with a suspect for such serious offences.
Yeah, no, I can believe that, absolutely. Just want to fill people in again. If you are just joining us, 3 people dead, 3 others injured, 1 of them critical after a series of incidents, all believed to be linked in Nottingham. 2 people stabbed to death on Ilkeston Road. Then there was an incident involving a van and 3 pedestrians. Then another body was found on Magdala Road, and then an arrest took place nearby. That man is in custody, 31 years old, been arrested on suspicion of murder. We have got a police statement, which is quite lengthy, which does say that they are keeping an open mind. They're working with counter-terrorism police, but they want to emphasise that that is, in these situations, normal. Graham, can I ask you, A lot of people as well, when you just hear multiple different eyewitness accounts to this, clearly incredibly shocked, massively taken by surprise from this. A lot of people expressing some form of regret that they didn't maybe do more, that they didn't step in, that they didn't shout something to distract the assailant. I can understand the way that those people feel, but I'm not actually convinced that that maybe helps police in those situations. The police who were on the scene, supposedly within around 5 minutes of the report of that initial stabbing.
Yeah, unless you've been in those sort of situations, and again, at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, there'll be a just like a night shift response on in Nottingham city centre. So a lot of the specialist units you are now seeing, the forensic teams, the extra additional firearms officers won't have been on duty at that time. It will have been like the core response over the night shift in Nottingham, who have responded to multiple incidents. And you don't become accustomed to it, but you do become like professional in dealing with these. For people to see this happen right in front of them, I've no doubt they would have frozen at the time. They can't speak. They find it very difficult to take in everything that's happening. Your mind focuses in on certain specific things. You don't take in the whole picture. It's very difficult to attune to the fact that there's other things going on, to take in everything that's happening, and even start engaging with the person doing it. You literally almost like you freeze with shock. Not surprised at all.
No, absolutely. Look, Graham, thank you very much. It's Graham Wetton, the former Met police officer. You can get all the very latest on this developing story on our website, gbnews.com. It's the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got the best analysis, best opinion, as well as all, especially in this case, the very latest breaking news. Now, earlier this afternoon, police took away 2 women in the back of a marked car after entering a property close to Ilkeston Road. Now, that road is where the 2 victims were initially found stabbed to death this morning. I am going to take you live to that scene very, very shortly. Loads of unanswered questions, and we are expecting a police conference very shortly. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before
and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. A fast-paced, breaking major incident in Nottingham where a man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people were found dead in the early hours of this morning. I'm going to take you now to the scene where it all broke initially, Ilkeston Road, with our reporter Jack Carston. So 2 of the victims were found stabbed. Efforts to resuscitate and revive them sadly proved in vain. But it's also the scene of an armed police raid not that long ago at a property on that road, and 2 women were taken away in the back of a marked van. Jack, you are on the scene where forensic officers, I believe, are still combing the area. What's going on?
Yeah, well, Patrick, you've probably seen from some of the shots over the past 5 minutes that investigations are extremely active here on Ilkeston Road. As you mentioned, this was one of those first locations that police were called to at 4 a.m. when 2 people were, of course, found dead in the road. Investigations from the forensic teams include, of course, going through those drains, as you might have seen. They've been dredging some of those drains, of course. They've been a lot of searching through a lot of the wheelie bins. The forensic officers going up and down this street, looking every single bin, taking out rubbish, looking through the rubbish, making sure, of course, is to see if there is any evidence that might help them, of course, in this investigation. Within that, they will not leave a single speck of this road untouched as they try to gather as much evidence as they can, as much information as they can for the police and their investigation, which of course is so early on here. There's lots of details which of course so still very much unclear. We did get that statement not long ago, of course, from Nottinghamshire Police that they are keeping an open mind, and that we had that first kind of confirmation, didn't we, that they are actively working with counter-terrorism policing. That they say as they normally would, but of course it is an indication that they are not ruling any possibility out here. We know that 3 people were, of course, hit with a van as well elsewhere in the city centre. 2 of those, we believe, have only suffered minor injuries. One of those is in hospital in critical condition. Okay. The police also, of course, wishing their families, friends very, of course, well in their recovery. But yes, scenes here very active as forensics.
Jack, could I just cut across you for a second, Jack, please? Is that all right? Sorry, can I just rather politely just ask you to just step to one side for me, just so we can get a little bit of a flavour of this road, Jack, if that's all right. Thank you very much. So I believe what we're looking at there, yeah, is indeed the road where 2 people sadly were stabbed to death early this morning and where a raid was taking place. And forensic officers have been busying themselves working through guttering, working through manholes there, and just trying to gather every single piece of information. That's Ilkeston Road in Nottingham where this incident first took place. It then marauded on to another road where a van was involved, hitting at least 3 people. One of those are now critical. Then there was another body that was found on a different road. A man was subsequently then arrested. An eyewitness for GB News said that they heard what sounded like gunshots. We recorded exclusive footage of the arrest, which I'll bring to you shortly. But what you're looking at there is forensic officers on the road, near as well a address at that property that was raided by armed police, and reports as well of more armed police being deployed into Nottingham city centre as we speak. Important to remind you that whilst police are not confirming this, it is terror, they're also not ruling it out, and we are hoping for a police press conference any moment. Jack, thank you very much. It's Jack Carston. We'll be going back to Jack on Ilkeston Road, which is really the epicentre where all of this happened. But earlier today, GB News spoke to Charlie Burley, who lives near the scene of the attacks, and this is what he heard and saw.
I live about 5 minutes down the road from Magdala Road, which is, of course, where we now know one of the bodies was found. I live in Sherwood, which is a very small, tight-knit community, very quiet. About 5:20 this morning, I was awakened by the sound of just an absolute cacophony of sirens. And it lasted for what I would say must be about half an hour. It was just siren after siren, vehicle after vehicle heading down Mansfield Road, which is the main road that connects where I live in Sherwood down to Magdala Road. It's about a 5-minute walk from here. And at that point, I had no idea what was going on, of course, but in that sort of situation, you assume people are heading into the city centre. But the emergency response, of course, was only just down the road from here. And it's such a quiet and peaceful area. It's come as a huge shock to everyone that lives here, all the residents, of course, that live nearby. And yeah, I mean, everyone is shocked and devastated by the news, of course.
So what did you spring out of bed and look out the window? What did you do, Charlie?
Yeah, exactly that. So the first couple of sirens I heard, I thought, okay, you know, that's normal. You kind of expect that. Maybe not on a Monday night. You know, Nottingham is a vibrant student city, but it's more at the weekends you tend to get the emergency vehicles going into town. But it became apparent after that it wasn't just a couple of vehicles. This was dozens of vehicles. And I could see the blue lights flashing through my curtains. I could see the sort of the gap between the flashing lights. Of course, that woke me up. I sat in bed for about 10 minutes just hearing the sirens going off and going off and going off. And I actually messaged my girlfriend at 6 a.m. saying something major must be happening around here because I have never heard an emergency response like this. It was like something else, you know, I've just never heard sirens like it in my life.
Charlie, we're all worrying that maybe this was targeted at students because student land is nearby and sometimes students are, as you say, it's a vibrant student city, busier at the weekends. Are there many student bars in that area?
No, this is the interesting thing about Mapley Park and Magdala Road is it's not. It's a quiet residential area and it's actually out of the city centre. You would have to perhaps make a 10-minute journey out of the city centre via a vehicle to actually get there. So it's not in the city centre itself, which is why, of course, for the residents living around here, it's come as such a shock. But Nottingham, of course, is a massive student city, as you mentioned, and a lot of the routes heading out of the city centre are back to areas that are populated by students. You've got Forest Fields just down the road from here, probably about a 10-minute walk, which is a huge student area. So it is, you know, it's not unusual to see students walking home at 5 a.m. or perhaps getting an e-scooter back. You know, it's very, very common in Nottingham because, as you say, it is a student city. And a lot of these students do go out in the week as well.
One eyewitness account, there's so many unanswered questions. I hope to bring all of the answers to those questions to you. Does it have the hallmarks of a terror attack? Why are we waiting so long for a police update on all of this? What can we learn from the extent of the police cordon? Also, are there other armed raids currently taking place across the city? But in a moment, I will have the up-to-the-minute political reaction from Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer to those shocking, horrific events in Nottingham. Now, though, it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Patrick, thank you. Our main story this afternoon, counter-terrorism police are working with the force in Nottinghamshire following an attack which left 3 people dead. 2 bodies were found in the early hours of the morning before a van was used to run down 3 people. The 3rd body was found later. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Nottinghamshire police believes the separate incidents are linked and say they're keeping an open mind over the motive. The COVID inquiry has been told the UK may not have been very well prepared to deal with the pandemic. Lead lawyer Hugo Keith KC said the nation was taken by surprise and argued Brexit had distracted the government from improving its strategy to tackle the disease. A video of some of those who suffered most during the pandemic was also played to the inquiry. A mother and her partner have been convicted over the death of a 9-year-old boy. Alfie Steele had 50 injuries on his body and was found submerged in a bath at their home in Droitwich in Worcestershire. Carla Scott was found guilty of manslaughter and Dirk Howell was convicted of his murder. Homeowners are being warned of further interest rate hikes after the latest data showed wages have risen at their fastest rate on record post-pandemic. It puts more pressure on the Bank of England as it tries to curb inflation. Wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.2% higher in the 3 months to April. Unemployment also unexpectedly fell. And former US President Donald Trump will appear in court today in Miami, Florida. Mr. Trump faces 37 charges of mishandling classified documents and is accused of unlawfully keeping US national security material. He's the first current or former president to face criminal charges. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2579 and 1.1655 euros. The price of gold is £1,552.99 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,605 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Just a quick update now, and I just want to emphasise that these are claims, but they have arisen in the last few minutes about some of the victims who are believed to have been involved in this ongoing incident, breaking incident in Nottingham. 3 people dead, 3 others injured, at least 1 critical, 1 man in police custody on suspicion of murder. This is according to multiple different reports. 2 of the victims of a knife and van rampage in Nottingham today were students just 5 minutes from home, and the 3rd is believed to be a man in his 60s. So I'll bring you more on that as we get it, but painting a picture there potentially of a random attack in Nottingham. But Rishi Sunak has thanked the police and emergency services for their response to the murders in Nottingham this morning. And I'm going to go to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, now, who's at Westminster. Darren, as we await for more information from the scene and we await for more information from the police, what is the latest that we've got from our political leaders?
Yeah, very good afternoon, Patrick. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, but politics here is carrying on as normal, but there has been almost unanimity, if you like, amongst politicians from across the political divide talking about the shock, the horror, the sadness about what's gone on in Nottingham in the early hours of this morning, but also the support for the police. As you said, the Prime Minister reacted within hours of news emerging from Nottingham, saying that he wanted to thank the police and the emergency services for their ongoing response to what he branded a shocking incident. He said he was being kept up to date with developments. A similar tale from the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, as well, saying that she was speaking to Nottinghamshire Police and had spoken to the Chief Constable to get regular updates. She was thanking the emergency services, but she talked how she was shocked and saddened by the deaths of those 3 people, and there are thoughts with those affected by the incidents. Again, similar words from Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, who was speaking at an AI conference a little earlier on today. He talked about how his thoughts were with the family and friends of those who had lost their lives and were injured, branding what had happened as awful news. And then this kind of extraordinary moment, because we don't really see this very often, Patrick, in politics, but a joint statement from 3 of the Nottinghamshire MPs, who again talked about how they felt the city being devastated by what had happened, but also talked about how Nottingham would come together. They said that Nottingham is a beautiful city, home to brilliant people from all backgrounds, and how they were shaken by today's events, but they will meet them collectively as a community and heal together. Unsurprisingly, as I say, there are lots of questions still about what the motivation of this attack may well have been, the timeline, indeed what precisely went on. Clearly the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister will be better briefed than most MPs are, but the message seems to be from across the political divide here at Westminster is that the police should be allowed the space and the time to carry out their investigations and to be thankful for the ongoing work that they continue to do.
Yeah, Darren, thank you very, very much. As Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor, keeping you up to date with the political reaction to this ongoing breaking incident in Nottingham, where 3 people have sadly died, 3 others injured, 1 of them critically, and 1 man in custody on suspicion of murder. Like I've said, this is a very fast-paced and fast-moving investigation. There are police raids taking place. 2 women were seen being put in the back of a marked police van, or car, I should say, on Ilkeston Road in Nottingham, which is where 2 people were stabbed to death around 4 o'clock this morning. It's a big student city, Nottingham, and again, just some of the latest, and this is just according to reports, but some of the latest is that 2 of the victims were believed to be students just 5 minutes from home, and the 3rd victim, a man in his 60s. It is painting a picture of a kind of marauding attack that took place in the early hours of this morning. We are hoping to get much more information from the police very, very soon, right here on this show. We will give you that as and when we do. We have a fleet of reporters at the various different locations across Nottingham, so we'll be going to those as well as forensic teams continue to comb the area. But we are very much due another police update, and I will be bringing that to you as and when I get it. I just want to emphasise as well that they are working with counter-terrorism police, but as yet, they are keeping an open mind. I will take you to Magdala Road very shortly, where sadly one of the victims was found. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Well, to today's big story, a man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people were found dead in Nottingham this morning. GB News has exclusive pictures of the suspect being arrested. 2 people were found dead in the street in Ilkeston Road. Just want to emphasise as well, another witness said that they heard what to them sounded like gunshots before the arrest that you're looking at on your screens right now took place, where an individual was also tasered and then put into a police vehicle. That man is 31 years old and has been arrested on suspicion of murder following these multiple incidents, which police are saying are linked. I'll run you through what we know in terms of those incidents. 2 people were found dead in the street in Ilkeston Road in Nottingham just after 4 a.m. They were believed to have been stabbed. A 3rd man was then found dead on Magdala Road, and another 3 people are in hospital, one of them in a critical condition after someone tried to run them over in a van on Milton Street, in which police believe are all connected incidents. Like I've said, one of those in hospital is in a critical condition. I'm going to take you live now to Ilkeston Road, which is, of course, in Nottingham, where the initial attack took place. So 2 people were stabbed to death on Ilkeston Road. Sadly, efforts to revive and treat those proved to be futile. But then there was an armed police raid at a property on that road where 2 women were put in the back of a marked police car. What you're looking at now is forensic police with their forensic suits on trawling through that scene. And what they were taking away just moments ago appeared to be some of the medical equipment that was clearly used to treat the people at that scene. But they've also been dredging guttering. They've also been dredging manholes as well. And they have been very, very active on this road and will continue to be so. Lots of forensic activity taking place. That is the scene where this all began. You can see them there, I believe, going through public bins, for example, and going through local hedgerows and into people's front gardens. Again, I want to emphasise that there was a property there that was raided and 2 people were taken away in the back of a marked police van. So we'll be bringing you the latest from that scene on Ilkeston Road in Nottingham, where that 31-year-old man initially did carry out this attack. But I am going now as well to GB News' East Midlands reporter Will Hollis, who is at the scene of where another incident took place today. Will, just explain to us exactly where you are and what happened behind you a little earlier this morning.
Yes, well, these attacks, they're being described as horrific by police here in Nottingham. You really do get a picture for how big this is and how serious the police are taking it, because we're showing you images from all across the city. If you were to connect them together, it would probably be about a square mile between the different police cordons. You've been mentioning places like Ilkeston Road as well as Milton Street, Ilkeston Road, where 2 people were found dead earlier this morning. That's believed to be possibly the first location, or at least the way that the police are talking about it is the first location. Then Milton Street, which is close to the city centre, where 3 people say that there was an attempt to run over 3 people in a van. It's believed that they're still in hospital. But where I am right now, this is Magdala. Just in the background, you can probably see over my shoulder that there's a big police van. It's a tactical support van, and it's square across the street, blocking any view from our cameras, because on the other side of it, you're going to see more police forensic tents. You're going to see those big square white tents, as well as the forensic officers in their usual attire, the white full head-to-toe clothing, as well as the white coverings for their boots. And what happened here was shortly after those first incidents that I just mentioned, another person was found dead. There's been detectives in white shirts going in and out of here, as well as just before we went live, there was fire and rescue trucks here. So this is clearly a very active place that the police are paying a lot of attention to. But they're paying a lot of attention across the city. And the latest that we've heard from the Chief Constable, Kate Maynell, was that we are keeping an open mind as we investigate the circumstances surrounding these incidents and are working alongside counter-terrorism policing.
Well, look, Will, thank you very much. Will Hollis, there, our East Midlands reporter. Now, he's at the scene there of Magdala Road, where sadly another body was found, another death occurred. But I have got some breaking news to bring to you right now. Yeah, this has just landed in front of me here. The University of Nottingham Students' Union has confirmed it has cancelled this evening's graduation ball following the attacks in the early hours. This is what the organisation have just said. This is they're devastated and shocked by the attacks that took place, leaving 3 people dead and 3 in hospital. This is now a statement from the Students' Union. They say, "We stand in solidarity with all our students and the wider city, and our thoughts are with the families and friends of those harmed, alongside those directly and indirectly affected by the unfolding of these terrible events. In light of this, we have made the decision to cancel the grad ball this evening. Attendees will be contacted in due course, but in the meantime, we are continuing to work with the university and relevant authorities to understand the situation." And I just want to reiterate again, the latest, this is according to reports. I'm just going to read some of these reports to you now, which is that supposedly 2 of the victims of a knife and van rampage in Nottingham were students just 5 minutes from home. The 3rd victim is believed to be a man in his 60s, and the 3 victims are believed to have been randomly attacked and stabbed to death by a knife man dressed in black. We will have more information as and when we get it. But I'm joined now by the former London police officer, Norman Brennan. Norman, thank you. This, as more information is just drip-fed through to us here, and again, we are expecting some kind of police press conference shortly, so we will keep you right up to date with all of that. This does appear to have the hallmarks of a marauding, random attack, Norman.
Yeah, I think what we've got to be careful of, Patrick, it's not really our job to investigate this, it's the police. Earlier on today, there were people demanding that the police release information. Well, the primary concern of this investigation was that the next of kin were the primary people that needed to be advised of those that were murdered or killed and those that were injured. Now, don't forget, the police will have all the information that you and I don't have. But one of the rare things of this attack is that there's 3 separate locations. So it's not as though it appears to be a target attack. It appears to be somebody that has just attacked people at will. Because it's been over a mile period with 3 separate locations, 2 dead in one location, 3 injured in another, and another one tragically killed at another location. Plus, it appears that a man and a knife has been used. This is very rare indeed. I mean, in fact, it's an anomaly that I've never seen before.
So you've never seen an incident like this before, Norman. The police understandably working alongside counter-terror officers as well.
Well, when I say I haven't seen it before, I'm talking about in general homicide, people stabbing each other, running each other over. Of course, if it's a terrorist attack, then yes, they do go and kill as many people as possible. But one of the things we need to be a bit careful of is that it appears that these attacks took place at 4 o'clock in the morning. I cannot recall a terrorist attack in Britain taking place at 4 o'clock in the morning. Terrorists normally want lots of people in a location so they can cause the maximum amount of damage. And 4 o'clock in the morning is, you haven't normally got the most people available. But like you, I mean, it's wrong probably to speculate, but there's all sorts of questions for which we haven't got the answers. But I'm sure by midnight tonight, many of us that are very surprised and worried and concerned and bemused and baffled as to what's happened today, hopefully will be told.
Yeah, and just run us through, Norman, in your experience, what will the police be doing now? Well, we know that there are other raids that are taking place. They're not uncommon, of course, as they pick through this individual's phone data, or they just find out where he lives or who his relatives are and all of this stuff. So you would naturally see that. But what will the police be doing now? Because this man has been in custody for quite a while.
Well, what they were doing is they'd be looking at all his electronic gadgets, whether he had a vehicle, whether he had a job. They're probably speaking to his neighbours. They'll probably find out where he lived or has lived. Those areas will be searched. They will speak to family and friends if he had anybody that were family and friends, anybody that he knew. The police will be doing absolutely everything. Now, you can't just clip your fingers on a murder investigation, and this is a triple murder investigation with 3 others injured at 3 separate scenes. The police must be given time to actually carry out their inquiries, and in the right time, when the police feel it's appropriate, they will tell us what has actually happened. But the caveat to all of this, Patrick, is this, is let's not forget that there are 3 families today that my colleagues within policing have given the worst possible news to. For them, time has changed and life will change forever. And there's 3 people that have been seriously injured, 1 critical. Those 6 people are the most important people in today's incident.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Norman, thank you very, very much. And I think as well, you know, some much-needed grounding at the end there. It's Norman Brennan there, who's a former London police officer. As we understand it, 2 raids have now taken place, armed raids at 2 separate properties, one of those at Ilkeston Road. I will be keeping you right up to date after a man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people were found dead in Nottingham this morning. I will be going live to the city centre with our fleet of reporters throughout the afternoon as we await a police press conference as well for all the latest on this fast-moving, fast-paced, breaking major incident. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 4 p.m. It's Patrick Christys. It's GB News. A major breaking ongoing incident on the streets of Nottingham. 3 people dead, 3 others injured, 1 critical, 1 man in police custody held on suspicion of murder. Armed raids being carried out across the city and armed police on the streets. Here is a timeline of events as we understand them so far. Police were called to 2 bodies in the street. Then a van collided with 3 pedestrians. Then another body was discovered. And then, as you're about to see now, footage, dramatic exclusive footage of this arrest that took place. A GB News eyewitness said that they heard what sounded like gunshots, followed by a man being tasered and put in the back of a police van. We are on the scene throughout the city, these multiple different scenes, with our fleet of reporters keeping you bang up to date on this ongoing major breaking incident. We're expecting a police press conference as well. We will be keeping you right up to date on a major incident that has gripped Nottingham and the nation.
Patrick, thank you. And as you've just been hearing, our main story on GB News this afternoon, counter-terrorism police are now working with the force in Nottingham following an attack which left 3 people dead this morning. 2 bodies were found in the early hours of the morning before a van was used to run down 3 other people. A 3rd body was found later. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder, and Nottinghamshire Police believes the separate incidents are linked, saying they're keeping an open mind about a motive. Kane Brady, who lives in the area, told us he saw an arrest being made.
Woke up to shouts of armed police, and what I said earlier sounded like some very loud commotion, sounded like gunshots. Honestly, it was that loud. We looked out the bedroom window and I saw tasers. I saw a man being dragged out, pinned to the floor. I saw him getting arrested, who was trying to resist. I then later saw, when they opened the van, I saw a large knife being pulled out. And then straight away, that's when the police then closed off both roads, both Maple Street and Bentinck Road.
Well, here's what we know so far in terms of a timeline. Just after 4 a.m, police were called to Ilkeston Road, where 2 bodies were found. They then attended another incident on Milton Street. Following reports, a driver in a van had tried to run over 3 people. They're now being treated in hospital. And then another victim, a man, was found dead later in Magdala Road in the centre of the city. Forensic teams are now on the scene in Magdala Road collecting evidence. Earlier, a large tent was put up, shielding a smaller one also at the site. We saw armed officers, some wearing balaclavas, on Balfour Road, a few hundred yards from the main cordon. They then entered a commercial property on the street, and 2 young women were eventually put into the back of a marked car. Police then appeared to rush to a separate location further down the road, quickly cordoning off an adjacent street. Well, of course, we'll be keeping an eye on events in Nottingham for you, and Patrick will have full coverage of any breaking news from that area. But in the meantime, let's bring you up to date with the rest of the day's news today. And 2 police officers have been served with gross misconduct notices in connection with the deaths of 2 teenagers in Cardiff. Kyrie Sullivan and Harvey Evans died last month, shortly after they were seen on CCTV riding an e-bike, followed by a police van. The police regulator says their conduct doesn't mean disciplinary proceedings will follow. The COVID inquiry has been told today the UK may not have been very well prepared to deal with the pandemic. Lead lawyer Hugo Casey said the nation was taken by surprise and argued Brexit had distracted the government from improving its strategy to tackle the disease. A video of some of those who suffered most during the pandemic was also played to the inquiry.
The most you can hope is to give your loved one a good death, and we will forever carry the guilt that our daddy was denied that.
I'm angry. I need questions answered. I'm just still hurt and I'm still upset.
And the time that he needed me most, I wasn't there. And I felt guilty about that, even though it wasn't my fault.
People contributing to the COVID inquiry there. Now, homeowners are being warned of further interest rate hikes after the latest data showed wages have risen at their fastest rate on record post-pandemic. That puts more pressure on the Bank of England as it tries to curb inflation. Wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.2% higher in the 3 months to April. Unemployment also unexpectedly fell. A mother and her partner have been convicted over the death of a 9-year-old boy. Alfie Steele had 50 injuries on his body and was found submerged in a bath at their home in Droitwich in Worcestershire. Carla Scott was found guilty of manslaughter, and Dirk Howell was convicted of the child's murder. Former US President Donald Trump will appear in court today in Miami, Florida. Mr. Trump faces 37 charges of mishandling classified documents and is accused of unlawfully keeping US national security data. He's the first current or former president to face criminal charges. And the heatwave threshold has been exceeded across the UK this summer, with temperatures hitting 32.2 degrees Celsius in Surrey on Saturday. That's the highest record so far this year. The Met Office says the rest of the week will be hotter than average for this time of year, but the forecaster also predicts the extreme heat will die down in the coming days. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Back now to Patrick.
Well, a man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people were found dead in Nottingham this morning. GB News has exclusive pictures of the suspect at the moment that they were arrested. And what we can see there, I will talk you through it, of course, if you are listening to us on radio, is an individual being pinned to the ground by what appears to be armed officers by a van on a street in Nottingham. An eyewitness also told GB News that they heard what sounded like gunshots before an individual was tasered and then arrested. 2 people were found dead in the street in Ilkeston Road in Nottingham. That was just after 4 a.m. Then a 3rd man was found dead in Magdala Road. We are at the scene of both of those roads, by the way, so I'll be taking you there as the forensic operations continue. Another 3 people are in hospital after someone tried to run them over with a van on Milton Street, in which police believe were connected incidents. And just over an hour ago, Nottingham police say they are keeping an open mind over the motive for the attack. They're working alongside counter-terrorism police to establish the facts. It's also worth noting that one of those people who was involved in that van rampage is in a critical condition. Let's go now to GB News' Home and Security editor, Mark White, who is on Milton Street, where those 3 people were hit by a van. Mark, what's going on where you are?
Well, this area, like a number of areas across Nottingham, remains cordoned off to allow those forensic teams and the detectives the chance to have a sterile environment where they can determine exactly what happened, gather the relevant evidence that they need to piece together the sequence of those events, which, yes, resulted in 3 people dying, 3 people being injured, and one of those critically. The critically injured man was walking up this street, Milton Street, in the city centre, along with 2 others, when this van apparently drove deliberately towards them. Now we're learning some more information about those who died as well, and GB News understands that 2 of those that were killed were students who were on their way back from Nottingham University at a nightclub that they had been attending, heading back towards the halls of residence when they were attacked. Nottingham University have actually cancelled their graduation ball this evening as a mark of respect, given the events that unfolded here in the early hours of this morning. So absolute tragedy as more and more information comes to light in the hours ahead. And it still is very much a fast-moving, active investigation with these armed police raids that are taking place at a number of properties that GB News understands are linked to the man who is being held in custody at this stage.
Mark, and actually I'm just seeing that in the last few moments, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has said our thoughts go to the victims of the tragic events in Nottingham, the injured, the families. We share the grief of our British friends and stand by their side. So the president of France has shared a message on this. The police over here say they are working with counter-terror police, but they're keeping an open mind at the moment, Mark.
Well, indeed. I mean, the French president and the French people are only too aware of the potential for these incidents, whether terror-related or not, when someone decides to go on a rampage and to kill and injure people. We need only remember back to the events last week in Annecy in the French Alps with these very young children that were stabbed by an asylum seeker in that tourist resort. And of course the messages of goodwill that were sent out from the British Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary and others to the French people at that time. And that tragedy, of course, involved a British youngster, 3-year-old girl, who we're now told has left hospital. But yes, the French people, like so many countries around the world, have seen tragic events unfold like this. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a sort of a terrorist-related motive for it to be a terrifying incident that really shocks a city, a community like this here in Nottingham. They have, of course, issues like any inner city has with violent crime, but nothing on this particular scale, the scale of events that unfolded in the early hours of this morning.
Indeed. Mark, I just want to paint a bit of a picture for people who are just joining us as what we understand has happened. Around 4 a.m, 2 individuals believed to be students on their way home from a night out. It is a celebration week, really. It was a celebration week for Nottingham University as students finish their studies and they go partying. And we understand that they were maybe on their way back home from an event there. Ilkeston Road is a big student residential area, as are the roads around it. And then that incident took place. They are believed to have been stabbed to death. Then there was an ongoing incident where 3 people, which I believe is where you are, were struck by a van. One of those is critical. And there was another individual found dead on Magdala Road, which I think we might have a couple of shots of that actual road that I can show us in just a second now. I believe that I do. I think, yes. So this is the road now. So the police van that's parked right across that road. Behind that van, they've had the white tents up and there's been fervent forensic activity. Dozens of forensic officers have been on duty both there and on Ilkeston Road, and indeed armed raids have taken place. And it has been, yes, properly confirmed, as GB News understands, that 2 of the victims were indeed Nottingham University students. And Mark, the police now will be frantically trying to really figure out what the motive for this was as those forensic inquiries continue, Mark.
Yes, well, alongside the detailed forensic examination that is underway is a fast-time investigation that involves these armed police raids on addresses that are linked to the suspect. There will be interviews that are taking place with the suspect as well, and the hope, of course, as always, is that that suspect is cooperating with the investigation, regardless from the identifying documents that they will have found on this individual. Everybody carries with them bank cards, potentially driving licence and alike. They'll have been able to find his home address, who he is. Does he have a criminal record? Does he have a record associated with extremism? It seems, the way the investigation is going at the moment, although it is working in tandem with counter-terrorism detectives, they have not taken the lead and they have not established a terrorist motivation as yet. They are keeping an open mind. So it doesn't seem that on the face of it, the initial investigations have found anything that immediately raises the alarm bells and suspicions that this could be terrorist related. However, as I say, with all of these investigations, the longer they go on, the more people they speak to. For instance, they won't have had any time really to get into this individual's laptop, phones, that kind of thing, to look back for anything incriminating in terms of whether there was a plan afoot to carry out this attack.
Look, Mark, thank you very much. That's Mark White there, our Home and Security editor from Milton Street in Nottingham, where this van, some more information, by the way, just dropping these, just according to reports, on the van that was allegedly used as part of this series of incidents. It was apparently a Vauxhall Vivaro van that was actually sold just weeks ago. This is according to reports, and it had been listed on eBay and was sold just weeks ago, and then, of course, appears to have been used in this particular rampage. I have just been informed that we can expect a police conference to take place at 5:30. So at 5:30, if it runs on time, of course, we will be taking that police press conference live here on this show, because there are so many unanswered questions. That police press conference expected at 5:30. I'm going to go now to Kevin Hurley, who's the former head of counter-terrorism of the City of London Police. Kevin, thank you very much. Police keeping an open mind, counter-terrorism police involved. That's not unusual. But can I just run through what we know so far? 2 students walking back from a night out, an apparently random incident there. We understand then a man in his 60s, again, randomly attacked, it would appear. Also an attempt to hit people, or they did hit people, but to kill people, one would imagine, with a van that was bought, I should say, just a couple of weeks ago. In your experience, what's your take on this? Just based on what we know so far. I want to emphasise, things can change. It's a fast-moving picture. Kevin?
Well, there's a further factor to consider, that police are carrying out raids with specialist firearms officers which is not necessarily the norm when you're going around searching suspect premises. I mean, what it comes down to, as we've rightly said, police need to keep an open mind, but in reality, what is the motive? It's either a mentally disordered person who's decided to go off on a rampage, or is perhaps someone doing it for some terror reason, whether they're left, right-wing terrorists or they're Islamist terrorists, who knows? But bottom line is the police need to get to the bottom of that motive to take it forward. And even if it is someone with a terrorist motive, the evidence generally is, with a lot of these cases, that they are themselves mentally disordered. So it's difficult to say much more than that.
I've just had this through to me as well. It has just been reported, actually, Kevin, as well, that the individual who's been arrested on suspicion of murder is understood to have had a history of mental health problems. That's what we understand so far. More on this, by the way, at 5:30 in the police press conference, where, frankly, we're going to find out, hopefully anyway, the answer to a lot of the questions that are on people's minds at the moment. But, Kevin, it does have that feel, doesn't it, of a marauding attack. And that, I think, will have been alerting maybe your antennae as the former head of counter-terrorism.
Yeah, of course. It's always one of the things that one would look at in this type of circumstance. But again, mentally disordered people carrying out marauding attacks is quite well known. Incidents happened in the UK. You may remember the case up in the beautiful Lake District a few years back, where a chap went on the rampage, shot 12 dead. I think he wounded and maimed another 11. Or years back, we had the Dunblane shooting, dreadful murders of over 20 children and a teacher. Then we had the other madman, because that's what he was, down in Hungerford, who killed another 30-odd people nearly. So it's too early really to say, although, of course, one always kind of jumps to the thought, maybe this is terrorist related. But one thing it tells me is this, is that we as a public are still very vulnerable to these types of situations because of the fact that our police are not able to take decisive action immediately when confronted with these people actually in action. And the reason for that, of course, is our normal patrolling response police do not carry handguns as they do in every country in the world, apart from Iceland and Norway. Even in sleepy New Zealand, the police are now armed. And that's the reason why when they had that terrible attack by that right-wing activist in Christchurch, police were able to stop him and deal with him immediately after he already killed 50-odd people, because they had the confidence to do so because they had firearms with them. We actually make ourselves less safe because we still persist with this idea of Dixon or Doc Green, Bobby on the beat. We all forget Dixon of Doc Green in the film was shot dead. If we want our police to be able to react quickly and stop us all being harmed from this kind of threat, they need to have the appropriate equipment to do that, and that means a pistol.
Now, Kevin, just elaborate on that, because, again, this is just the initial understanding of events as we know it so far. Police were called to two bodies in the street on Ilkeston Road. They sadly died there. Now, we believe the police arrived at that scene within about 5 minutes. But then what appears to have happened is an incident with a van, and then what appears to have happened is another individual dead as well. That incident with a van, by the way, and I'm just getting this through to me now, the leader of Nottingham City Council says that some of the victims of that van attack were waiting at a bus stop. So that's the latest that we've got now. So there's this picture of a moving attack. I mean, we then saw armed police carrying out raids. A GB News eyewitness said that they'd heard what sounded like gunshots in the initial arrest. We don't know about that yet. We'll have to wait for the police to confirm that. But you think that when attacks like this happen, if all police were armed, it would potentially limit the amount of casualties?
Yeah, I mean, and I use the example of the Nice lorry attack we remember back in 2016, where 86 people were run down by someone in a lorry, and he killed or badly injured nearly another 400. The way he was stopped were beat bobbies on bicycles who cycled after him, pulled up alongside and shot him in the cab. The bottom line on it is there are very, very few armed police patrolling on our streets. The majority still remain unarmed. And in the end, when someone runs amok in our shopping centres, in a school, on the street like this. I would like to think the first police officer on scene, she can pull out her gun and she can shoot them to stop them, to protect the rest of us. Because we still slavishly believe the world is as it once was. It's not. The demographics are different. Things are changed. We need our police to be able to take, in extremis, decisive action to stop these mad attackers in their tracks.
Well, and I suppose the example to, in a sense, some would say, Kevin, maybe prove your point, is that in the wake of this, we are seeing armed raids on houses and armed police pumped onto the city centre, which clearly they are doing that because they believe that keeps people safer. And so I suppose you could argue, therefore, that maybe they should be there in the first place. Look, Kevin, I really appreciate your time and your insight into an incident like this. I want to emphasise we are expecting a lot more detail at 5:30 from a police press conference. Nottinghamshire Police will be providing an update for us at 5:30. That was Kevin Hurley, who's the former head of counter-terrorism at the City of London Police. We are getting a slow drip feed of information here. When I first came to air, we had no idea about who was sadly involved in this incident. But now we do have this very sad news that 2 of the victims of this morning's attacks were students, and the University of Nottingham has just released the following statement. They say, "It is with great sadness that we confirm the sudden and unexpected death of 2 of our students following a major incident in Nottingham city centre overnight. We are shocked and devastated by the news, and our thoughts are with those affected, their families and friends. We know this is likely to cause distress for staff and students in our community. Support is available through our support and wellbeing services for any of our community who may need it." And that is the confirmation that 2 of those involved, 2 of the 3 deceased in this morning's incident in Nottingham were indeed students. And some of the students who have also been talking to news outlets just emphasising the random nature of this attack. They just got unlucky, one person says. They were 5 minutes from home and they got stabbed by a random guy. So that's the very latest as we have it. More on this developing story on our website. Go to gbnews.com. It's the fastest growing national news website in the country, and it's because we have the best analysis, the best opinion and the latest breaking news. And if any moment as well you want to go and watch our exclusive footage of the individual involved in this, believed to be involved in this, being arrested, you can get that on our website. Now, a reminder that police will hold that news conference at 5:30 after 3 people were found dead in Nottingham. I will bring that to you live, and I'm also going to go to the scene of where these multiple incidents have taken place in just a tick. It's Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest from Nottingham is that 2 of the victims in this morning's attack were indeed students just 5 minutes from home. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. 3 people in total have died after this series of events. I'm joined now by GB News' East Midlands reporter Will Hollis from, I believe, the scene of the other death involved in this. From what we are hearing through reports, it is believed that was a man in his 60s, also stabbed to death at random by a black-clad knifeman. Before that, others, of course, were struck after having been waiting at a bus stop. They were hit by a van. And, Will, behind you is a police van, our forensic teams combing the area. What is the latest exactly where you are? Where specifically are you?
Yes, well, this is Magdala. It's about a mile or so from where Ilkeston Road is, where those 2 people were found dead. In the background, you can probably see that a new police car has just pulled up. The last time I spoke to you, Patrick, I think I said that the police have put this big tactical support group van adjacent across the road so that it blocks our view of the forensic teams and their tents. Actually, just a few moments ago, about 8 or so forensic officers in their traditional white uniforms came off of Magdala Street and then went directly to the street that runs parallel down towards Mansfield Road, which, without getting too deep into the geography of Nottingham, basically connects all of the routes that we've been talking about today. What we're hearing is that the man has been arrested, 3 people have been killed, and quite recently the University of Nottingham has confirmed that 2 of those people who were killed were students at the University of Nottingham. It is a massive student city. Tens of thousands of people come from around the country as well as the world to come and study at Nottingham's 2 universities, Nottingham Trent as well as Nottingham University, which, as I've said, have said that the 2 of the people that were killed in this attack were a part of their university. Just in terms of the surrounding area, this is about a mile or so outside of the city centre, and a lot of these houses, they're kind of big old Victorian houses, but a lot of them are now shared houses, rented houses, because many of the people that live in this sort of an area, as well as a large amount that are working professionals, the majority of them are students, and it really does seem that we've had it confirmed now that the student community is at the heart of this attack here in Nottingham.
Absolutely, Will. Thank you very much. Will Hollis there from Magdala Road, where one individual sadly died earlier today. As Will was also talking about, the other 2 individuals killed were believed to be, are indeed actually students who were on their way home from a nightclub understood to be Prism nightclub in the town. They were stabbed to death on the streets of Ilkeston, which is where this incident initially took place. Now, counter-terrorism police have raided at least one property. 2 women from within that property, as has been reported, were taken away in the back of a marked police car. And I want to emphasise that we will have live a police press conference from Nottingham Police at 5:30 on this channel. Earlier today, GB News spoke to Charlie Burley, who lives near the scene of the attacks, and this is what he heard and saw.
A couple of sirens I heard, I thought, okay, you know, that's normal. You kind of expect that. Maybe not on a Monday night. You know, Nottingham is a vibrant student city, but it's more at the weekends you tend to get the emergency vehicles going into town. But it became apparent after that it wasn't just a couple of vehicles. This was dozens of vehicles. And I could see the blue lights flashing through my my curtains. I could see the sort of the gap between the flashing lights. Of course, that woke me up. I sat in bed for about 10 minutes just hearing the sirens going off and going off and going off. And I actually messaged my girlfriend at 6 a.m. saying something major must be happening around here because I have never heard an emergency response like this. It was like something else, you know, I've just never heard sirens like.
Yes, indeed. Now, Rishi Sunak has thanked the emergency services for their response to this shocking incident in Nottingham and has sent his condolences to the relatives of those who have lost their lives. We'll be getting the political reaction very shortly, but first, it's your latest news headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour on GB News. It's just been confirmed 2 of the 3 people killed in today's attack in Nottingham were students at the city's university. They were walking near the University of Nottingham halls of residence when they were stabbed on Ilkeston Road. Their bodies were found in the early hours of this morning before a van was used to run down 3 other people, and a 3rd body was found later. The University of Nottingham graduation ball, which was due to take place tonight, has been cancelled as a mark of respect. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder, and Nottinghamshire Police believes the separate incidents are linked, saying they're keeping an open mind about the motive. In other news today, the COVID inquiry has been told the UK may not have been very well prepared to deal with the pandemic. Lead lawyer Hugo Keith, KC, said the nation was taken by surprise and argued Brexit had distracted the government from improving its strategy to tackle the disease. A video of some of those who suffered most during the pandemic was played to the inquiry. And homeowners are being warned of further interest rate hikes after the latest data showed wages have risen at their fastest rate on record post-pandemic. It puts more pressure on the Bank of England as it tries to curb inflation. Wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.2% higher in the 3 months to April. Unemployment also unexpectedly fell. And in the United States, former President Donald Trump will appear in court in Miami, Florida today. Mr. Trump facing 37 charges of mishandling classified documents, and he's accused of unlawfully keeping US national security data. He's the first current or former president to face criminal charges. More on all of those stories, head to our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Let's have a quick look at the markets for you. And the pound will buy you $1.2606 and 1.1667 euros. The price of gold, £1,547.37 an ounce. The FTSE 100 is at 7,595.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
A reminder that the police will be holding a news conference at 5:30 after 3 people, including 2 University of Nottingham students, were killed in Nottingham. We will bring that to you live. It is a scene that has spread across multiple different areas, and the motives of the attacker, the motives are as yet unknown. Counter-terrorism police are involved in the operation and have been involved in raiding multiple different properties across the city. Armed police have been relocated to the centre of Nottingham, and there is a big armed police presence there. Some more details emerging of the vehicle that was involved in this incident. It is understood to have been bought off eBay just a couple of weeks second-hand before the incident took place. The two students who were killed just 5 minutes from home were stabbed to death. A large knife was recovered from a scene nearby. Another man was also stabbed to death. That man, as we understand it at the moment, is believed to have been in his 60s. Again, it appears to be a random attack. 3 people hit with this van waiting at a bus stop as well. One of those is still in a critical condition, the other 2 serious but stable. I'm going to be bringing you any updates as and when we get it. But the local residents are coming out and saying they're incredibly puzzled by the motives of what appears to be a random marauding attack. But again, I want to emphasise that counter-terrorism police are involved in the operation. Now, Kane Brady is a student in Nottingham, and he actually filmed the man being arrested. So GB News has the exclusive footage of a 31-year-old man been arrested on suspicion of murder, actually being arrested. Here is what Kane told GB News about what he saw.
We saw a man being dragged out of a van. We saw him getting tasered. We saw the police pinning him down as well. It was quite a scary thing to wake up to so early on in the morning.
What was your first thought when you saw that happening?
I had not a clue. I didn't really know where it was going to go because there was only a few policemen that were there at the scene. I know they called for backup straight away. And the man was resisting arrest, so I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if that was the end of it, if it was ongoing or what.
And Kane, you saw the knife. They retrieved a knife from the van. You told us earlier it was the size of A4 paper.
Yeah, I'm looking back now. It was even bigger than that. It was a massive knife. The blade was huge. Me and someone else, when we saw the knife, both looked at each other straight away and were like, "Oh my God, what the hell?"
Are you a student at the uni, Kane?
Yeah, so I'm a student at the uni. Where we live is mostly student area. So when we saw that, just absolute shock.
Yeah.
And Kane, would it be how unusual would it be for students to be perhaps going home at 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, not too unusual. As I said earlier, we know a few people that were out last night, just making sure they're okay and everything. Yeah, not unusual at all. There was a few events on yesterday, so a lot of people would have been out last night.
Tell me about Ilkeston Road, Kane, if you're familiar with that. That's the first place where 2 people were found dead in the street at 4 a.m. Is that a place that has plenty of bars, pubs, etc. on it?
Yeah, it does have a few, but it'll be more houses. It was where someone I know, it was their house in last year was on the end of their road. That road was, so right. There'll be quite a lot of students living there. So I'm not saying it is, but it will be like maybe people walking home. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Of course, there's also a lot of international students in Nottingham too.
Yeah.
I think I'm just thinking. Yeah. I think there's around 13,000 of them from all around the world coming to Nottingham University. So this is going to be all sorts of headaches for families living overseas, worrying about their student children in Nottingham.
Yeah, no, 100%. Nottingham, you see many people from many different walks of life, so it's quite scary that something like this could be anyone.
Yeah, just to reiterate again, we're going to take a police press conference live at 5:30. So many unanswered questions about this at the moment. Was it terror-related or not? The individual in question, who has been arrested by police on suspicion of 3 counts of murder, was reportedly known to have mental health issues. There was a knife and a van involved in this attack. Was it premeditated? We don't know yet at the moment. Loads of unanswered questions. As I've said as well, some other people that we know of have been taken by police after a series of armed raids, armed police officers on the streets of Nottingham. 2 of the victims were students. One of the victims is believed to have been a man in his 60s. We await confirmation as to all of that. But Rishi Sunak has thanked the police and the emergency services for their response to the murders in Nottingham this morning. There has been a wide-scale police response as well. Sorry, a political response, I should say, not just from Rishi Sunak, from Keir Starmer, and from a whole host of local MPs. GB News' political editor Darren McCaffrey is at Westminster for us. Darren, thank you. What is the political response to this particularly shocking incident, Darren?
Yeah, very good afternoon to you, Patrick. Unsurprisingly, there is condemnation, a reflection of the sadness and sorrow right across the political divide here at Westminster today, and also praise for the police and the emergency services for what went on in the early hours in Nottingham this morning. Rishi Sunak actually mid-morning tweeted that he wanted to thank the police and the emergency services for their ongoing response, said that he was being kept up to date with developments and that his thoughts were with those who had been injured and who had died. And a similar reflection from the Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who said that she was being constantly updated on this, that she'd spoken to the Chief Constable of Nottinghamshire Police, but also that she was shocked and saddened that 3 people had lost their lives and that her thoughts were with those who'd been affected. And similar sentiments as well from Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party. He was speaking at an AI conference earlier today, Patrick, also talking about how his thoughts were with the family and friends who had lost their lives, and also thanking the police and the emergency services. And then, interestingly, this afternoon we had a joint statement from 3 of the Nottinghamshire MPs. It doesn't often happen in politics that you get joint statements from MPs, but they want to reflect the pride in their city, even in the most horrific of circumstances. They issued a statement saying that Nottingham is a beautiful city, home to brilliant people from all backgrounds. We are shaken by today's events, but we'll meet them collectively as a community and heal together. So a reflection, as I say, of the mood here at Westminster, one of sadness and sorrow, but one of praise too for the emergency services, and a message, I think, Patrick, from politicians here to give the police the space and time to investigate this crime properly.
Yeah, indeed. Darren, thank you very much. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor. Just some more witness testimony emerging as we speak, actually, from a string of horrific incidents that have happened. The police obviously saying that they are all, as they understand it at the moment, connected. The footage that we've been playing you of the arrest, which is exclusive to GB News, shows a man being, as we understand it, maybe tasered and then bundled into the back of a police car. There was a van that was also involved in one of these attacks, which careered into 3 people at a bus stop. One of those is critically injured. There are 2 large cracks in the windscreen of that van and 2 large dents in the bonnet as well, which gives an indication, I think, of the force with which that van was driven into individuals. A backpack was pictured lying next to the vehicle as well. That appears, of course, to have now been taken away by police. There are forensic officers at the scene of the 3 separate scenes that have taken place in this attack, and counter-terrorism specialist firearm officers, and it has now been confirmed as counter-terrorism specialist firearm officers, stormed a home just yards away from where the 2 bodies of 2 Nottingham University students were found stabbed to death. The armed police, according to one eyewitness, banged on the door and they started screaming, "Armed police, come to the front door now." That raid lasted around 15 minutes. And there is some absolutely heartbreaking witness testimony to, at around 4 o'clock in the morning, what people saw and heard, because it's a big student area. People were on their way back from nightclubs. Term is ending as well, so students, of course, were out and about in Nottingham. But with it being such a hot night, what a lot of the witnesses are saying is that they'd left their windows open, and so unfortunately they could hear exactly what happened, and there's talk of blood-curdling screams before watching on as 2 people were repeatedly knifed. The attacker then apparently walked off, I'm quoting now, calm as anything, and then proceeded to continue with this rampage, and that's really the only word that can be used to describe it. The police are holding a press conference at 5:30, so not long now. We will be taking that live. If there are any more updates before then, we will, of course, be giving those to you as well. But as we understand it, it would appear a random attack of 2 students on their way home from a nightclub in Nottingham, repeatedly stabbed to death in the street. Then there was a van attack, followed by another stabbing, followed by an arrest. The man in question, 31 years old, has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Multiple different armed raids have taken place as well, with a couple of other women being taken away in the back of a police van. We have no more update as to their involvement or otherwise yet. We have no more updates on the police questioning of this individual, but we do know that counter-terrorism police are involved, although police are urging everybody to keep an open mind. But stay with us, because we've just had news that a vigil is going to be held to mark the sad passing of those killed in Nottingham, so that locals and university students can pay their respects. I'm going to take you live to the scene of that vigil very, very shortly. It's Patrick Christys on GB News. Stay with us, because there's a fast-moving picture here, this devastating incident in Nottingham.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, what you're looking at now are some live shots that we have of a vigil currently taking place at St Peter's Church in Nottingham. So that is live footage of the inside of St Peter's Church in Nottingham, where a vigil has started and will be taking place all evening after 3 people, including 2 Nottingham University students, were killed in Nottingham in the early hours of this morning. So that is where the vigil will be taking place. We can see, I believe, there's some candles already having been lit at the altar at that church. Joining us now is former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley, who's going to give us his insight onto this particular incident. I want to emphasise that we've got a police press conference coming up at 5:30 p.m, so we're just over half an hour away from that press conference right now. Peter joins me. And Peter, can I ask, sorry, I was under the impression that for a period of time you were struggling to get through to your son. Is that right? I mean, it's every parent's worst nightmare what's going on here now. Could you just... Is everything OK?
Yes, fortunately it is, thank you. And the few anxious hours that my wife and I had this morning, because our son is a student at the University of Nottingham, of course now, because he's safe and alive and well, absolutely pale into insignificance of the devastating, heartbreaking news that parents will have received today, because two students, of course, are now tragically murdered by a coward whose cowardly, senseless, pointless actions have snuffed out such beautiful young lives. And it is a day of great, great heartbreak. And I sincerely hope that the detectives working on this case can secure all the evidence so that a conviction can be secured at some point when there is a trial.
We know a knife has been recovered. We know a van has been recovered. According to reports, that van was bought second-hand off eBay just a couple of weeks before this attack took place. We also know that forensic teams have been raiding, along with counter-terror police, a couple of different properties. A couple of other people have been removed from those properties and were taken away in the back of a marked police van. What's your take on what we know so far, Peter?
Well, this is a massive policing operation which will involve dozens upon dozens of detectives. There are multiple scenes of crimes, of course, and there may be multiple other addresses that will become of interest as the investigation progresses. And of course, there is the vehicle, there is the suspect, and every item of clothing, every square inch of that vehicle will have to be searched and examined. And of course, all these multiple scenes call upon experienced forensic experts. So it's not just detectives, it's forensic, it's firearms, it's a huge operation with a lot of complexity to it.
Peter, what can I read into the fact that they have put a lot more armed police patrolling Nottingham streets as we speak about? Because that would appear to potentially contradict the line and the narrative that is being put out, that they believe that they've arrested everybody who they can who's in connection with this, and that they think they've managed to secure the scene. Just clear that up for me, Peter.
Well, I don't have any insider information to give you on this particular investigation, but so often we hear from the police following a murder, for example, in whatever community that may be, that there are increased patrols. And the reason they often do this is because it gives the public confidence to get back out onto the streets once again, and it gives communities some kind of satisfaction that the police are there, they are keeping the area safe, that they will be preventing any kind of reoccurrence of these sorts of events. I don't know exactly why, but those are often common reasons for deploying lots of police officers in locations such as this.
And just quickly, Peter, we understand that the individual who's been arrested has previously suffered from mental health problems, but does this have all the hallmarks of a random attack to you?
It would appear to me that it certainly was a marauding attack, perhaps with a lack of real thorough preparation. But regardless, and I take no doubt whatsoever in reiterating the words, this was cowardly. This was snuffing out beautiful young lives. And I wish the detectives all the very best in their efforts to secure evidence to ensure that any guilty party gets suitably convicted.
Look, Peter, thank you, and I'm very glad as well, of course, you managed to get through to your son. It is every parent's absolute worst nightmare. Peter Blexley, thank you very, very much, former top cop. Now, A lot of these unanswered questions we are all hoping we will get the answers to at 5:30. That's when the police press conference, which I'm going to be taking you to live, will occur. 5:30, so just about half an hour away now, OK? That is following the deaths of 3 people in Nottingham. In a few minutes as well, I'll be taking you live to the vigil in Nottingham for those 3 victims. We will bring you both of those events live here on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, Britain's News Channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 5 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. 3 dead, 3 injured, 1 arrested after a major incident in Nottingham. I can take you live now to the scene of a vigil taking place for those 3 people who sadly lost their lives. That is St. Peter's Church in Nottingham. 2 of those individuals who were stabbed to death at 4 a.m. this morning have been confirmed as university students just on their way home after a night out celebrating their end of year. So that is the vigil that's currently taking place right now. But of course, this incident culminated in this arrest, which GB News has obtained exclusive footage of. A man, 31 years old, currently being detained on suspicion of murder after a knife and van rampage through the streets of Nottingham. We are going to be bringing you live at 5:30, so just under half an hour away, live police press conference where we will get, hopefully, answers to a lot of people's questions. Counter-terrorism police are involved, but what were the real motives behind this attack? What really went on? We'll bring you very much up to the second updates with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News.
Let's bring you up to date then with what exactly happened in Nottingham today. 2 of the 3 people killed in today's attack in the city were students at the university. They were walking in the early hours of the morning near the University of Nottingham halls of residence when they were stabbed on Ilkeston Road. Their bodies were found in the early hours before a van was used to run down 3 other people, and a third body was found later. The university graduation ball, which was due to take place tonight, has been cancelled as a mark of respect, and a 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Nottinghamshire Police believes the separate incidents are linked, but they say they're keeping an open mind about the motive. Kane Brady, who lives in the area, told GB News he saw an arrest being made.
We woke up to shouts of armed police, and what I said earlier sounded like some very large commotion, sounded like gunshots. Honestly, it was that loud. We looked out the bedroom window and I saw tasers. I saw a man being dragged out, pinned to the floor. I saw him getting arrested, who was trying to resist. I then later saw, when they opened the van, I saw a large knife being pulled out. And then straight away, that's when the police then closed off both roads, both Maple Street and Bentinck Road.
We understand people are gathering in the centre of Nottingham tonight to meet for a vigil being held at St Peter's Church in the centre of the city. We understand that has just started, and we are, of course, expecting a press conference at 5:30 this evening, the latest here on GB News. But in other news today, 2 police officers have been served with gross misconduct notices in connection with the deaths of 2 teenagers in Cardiff. Kyrie Sullivan and Harvey Evans died last month, shortly after they were seen on CCTV riding an e-bike, being followed by a police van. The police regulator says their conduct doesn't mean disciplinary proceedings will follow. And the COVID inquiry has been told today the UK may not have been very well prepared to deal with the pandemic. Lead lawyer Hugo Keith KC has said the nation was taken by surprise and argued Brexit had distracted the government from improving its strategy to tackle the disease. The inquiry also heard local health chiefs were repeatedly excluded from pandemic planning. A video of some of those who suffered most during the pandemic was played to the inquiry.
The most you can hope is to give your loved one a good death, and we will forever carry the guilt that our daddy was denied that.
I'm angry. I need questions answered. I'm just still hurt and I'm still upset.
And the time that he needed me most, I wasn't there. And I felt guilty about that, even though it wasn't my fault.
The thoughts and feelings of some of those who suffered most during the pandemic. Now, homeowners are being warned of further interest rate hikes after the latest data showed wages have risen at their fastest rate on record post-pandemic. It puts more pressure on the Bank of England as it tries to curb inflation. Wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.2% higher in the 3 months to April. Unemployment also unexpectedly fell. A mother and her partner have been convicted over the death of a 9-year-old boy. Alfie Steele had 50 injuries on his body and was found at their home in Droitwich in Worcestershire. Carla Scott was found guilty of manslaughter and Dirk Howell was convicted of the little boy's murder. In the United States, former US President Donald Trump is due to appear in court today in Miami, Florida. Mr. Trump facing 37 charges of mishandling classified documents and accused of unlawfully keeping US national security data. He's the first current or former president to face criminal charges. And lastly, the heatwave threshold has been officially exceeded across the UK, with temperatures hitting 32.2 degrees Celsius in Surrey on Saturday. That's the highest record so far this year. The Met Office saying the rest of the week will be hotter than average for this time of year, but also predicting the extreme heat may come down slightly in the coming days. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Back now to Patrick.
Let's get back to Nottingham. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. 3 people died in the early hours of the morning. We can see live pictures now from St Peter's Church, where a vigil is being held. Nottingham City Council leader David Mellon said it's a chance for people to come together to take in the enormity of what's happened. I think you can just hear in the background there as the organs are playing. What we are witnessing is flowers being laid at the altar, candles being lit as people pay their respects. It's worth reminding ourselves that in the last hour or so it was confirmed that 2 of the deceased were Nottingham University students just on their way home from a night out. A man and a woman, both stabbed to death. This has been called a truly shocking and awful incident, and that whatever the motives are, we should stand against them. And those are the comments of Nottingham City Council leader. People there coming to pay their respects at St Peter's Church in Nottingham. There will be a service and there will be a vigil. I also want to remind you, as you will be able to see on your screens if you're watching us online or watching us on your telly, that at 5:30, so in just around 15-20 minutes time, we will be taking you live to a police press conference. So many unanswered questions about what happened. I will fill you in on the timeline of events as we understand it. At around 4 a.m, police were called to Ilkeston Road, which is a student residential area, where 2 people were being stabbed to death. The police attended within around 5 minutes. Supposedly, the attacker then calmly walked off, dressed all in black with a rucksack on their back, wielding a large knife. There was then an incident involving a white van, which, according to reports, was bought second-hand off eBay just a couple of weeks before the incident, driven into a group of 3 people at a bus stop. One of those people is in a critical condition. The other 2 people are believed to be stable. Witnesses there just recounted their absolute shock at initially assuming this was some kind of hit and run. Then a little bit later on, another body was found further down the road, about half a mile away, believed to be that of a 60-year-old man who also is reported to have died of stab wounds. Then an arrest took place where police, a local said they heard gunshots. That's unconfirmed, but police tasered an individual, a 31-year-old man, and put him in the back of a police car. He has been arrested and detained on suspicion of murder. We are going to get a police press conference at 5:30 p.m. Police are working alongside counter-terrorism officers at the moment and are, quotes, keeping an open mind as to the motives. But the camera there at St Peter's Church in Nottingham, what you can see is that church really filling up now, with hundreds of people gathered to pay their respects and to mourn the loss of 2 university students. Nottingham University have released a statement expressing their sorrow and their grief. They have cancelled their graduation ball this evening. They are trying to do their best to support the families and the friends of everybody who was sadly involved. And I just want to emphasise again that you are watching now the vigil that's being held for 3 people killed in a series of attacks, 2 of whom were students at Nottingham University, as candles are being lit and placed at the altar there, and flowers as well. That church will indeed be filling up, of course, throughout the course of this evening. And I just want to say as well that GB News has exclusive pictures of the suspect being arrested. So that's where we are now, tragically. This is what was happening at the time. 2 people were found dead in the street of Ilkeston Road in Nottingham just after 4 a.m. And this is footage now of a man being arrested by police. You can see a van there, a white van at the scene, that's got smashed windscreen and 2 dents on the bonnet. And somebody's managed to get some footage of this from out of their window. That van is, of course, connected with this incident. That's according to the police. It is understood to have been bought off eBay second-hand. Police are keeping an open mind over the motive of the attack. They are working alongside counter-terror colleagues to establish the facts. We have also seen that at least one raid by counter-terror police, by armed police, has taken place. 2 women were then put in the back of a marked police vehicle and taken off. And there are now armed patrols throughout the streets of Nottingham. I'm going to go now to GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who's at Nottingham Central Police Station ahead of this police press conference that is due to take place at around 5:30, which we will be taking live. Mark, yes, you are there at the scene where we're expecting a police press conference. Have you got anything for us yet?
Yeah, Central Nottingham Police Station, where the Chief Constable, Kate Mainsell, will give a news conference around about 5:30. These things have a tendency to slip, of course. She's been heading this operation all day as the police, firearms officers, not just from this force, but neighbouring forces like Derbyshire, have been involved in these raids at properties connected with this prime suspect, who is now in custody. Last hour, of course, Patrick, we confirmed to you that the 2 people who were killed in Ilkeston Road were 2 young students from the University of Nottingham who had been heading home. They'd been at a nightclub, the Prism nightclub, which is a popular venue frequented by students, heading on their way home up Ilkeston Road when they were attacked and stabbed to death. And then we know about this other incident with the van ploughing into people on Milton Street, where I've been for most of the day. Still a scene of detailed forensic examination as they bit by bit just work their way through what is a crime scene, multiple crime scenes across this city, including, of course, at Magdalen Road, where the 3rd person who died was stabbed to death. We don't know anything in the way of details about this individual at this stage. The man that was arrested, you're right, he was tasered. It was an armed police operation to stop his van. There were reports of the sound of gunfire, but certainly the police have not confirmed that any officers opened fire. And I would have thought, given the nature of that type of operation, they might well have said that had that been true. It could have been the sound of, batons smashing against the window, the windscreen of this van. There was 2 very visible marks on the front windscreen of this white van, which did indicate that officers perhaps were smashing their way in, as they do, armed officers, when they're trying to get compliance with someone inside a vehicle. It's about shock and awe, trying to get them just get out of that vehicle in the safest possible manner to comply with those officers, as this man seems to have done, because by the time the viewer for GB News who sent in that video was watching this drama unfold, the man was down on the ground, surrounded by those armed officers, having been tasered, and was in the process, of course, of being handcuffed, taken to custody, and is being, we understand, questioned, or at least that would be the hope of detectives. We don't know how compliant this individual has been with the ongoing investigations.
Mark, there is a vigil taking place as we speak at St Peter's Church in Nottingham, and we're witnessing some deeply emotional scenes there of many of the people in that congregation appear to be students, as indeed were 2 of the victims. I just believe that we might be able to listen in slightly to it. I think maybe that might be quite poignant if we could just listen slightly into what's being said at this vigil at the moment.
Give thanks to all those who are working to care for them.
OK. Yeah, it's difficult to make out exactly what's being said, but obviously it's an emotional setting for people who are laying flowers and candles. Now, Mark, we are just behind where you are at Nottinghamshire Central Police Station, going to get an update from the police. And I think, really, what we're all wanting them to clear up is whether or not this is terror-related. A suspect is in custody. Counter-terrorism police are involved, but police, at the moment, say they're keeping an open mind. We should get a bit more info soon, we think.
Yes, I mean, I guess it depends on what your definition of terrorism is. It might not be linked to a particular political motive, but certainly it seems from all the evidence that has come in already that this was an individual who set out to attack multiple people in multiple locations, and quite what the motivation was, well, we're not sure at this time, but certainly it seems very concerning. We are expecting to hear from the Home Secretary in under an hour's time in some statements. We've heard from the Prime Minister as well today. That tells you, Patrick, that this is not the normal tragedy in terms of what faces this nation on a not too irregular basis, you know, where often one, two or multiple people die as a result, often of crime-related incidents. But this seems to be different in the way in which those in political power have been referring to things throughout the day. So I'm not sure we'll get much more from the Chief Constable that we didn't already get in the statement. They tend to be very reluctant to expand further on carefully crafted statements they make in their releases. But I think from the political sphere in the hours ahead, we're likely to get some more details, and it may be very worrying detail indeed.
It's worth noting as well that Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has come out and given his sympathies as well. Look, Mark, thank you very much. I'll go back to you shortly. It's Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor. He's outside Nottinghamshire Central Police Station, where in just a matter of moments we're going to get a police press conference for you that should clear up, hopefully anyway, a lot of the unanswered questions surrounding the fact that there were 3 people killed in the early hours of this morning, 3 others injured, 1 critically, in Nottingham in what appears to be a marauding attack involving a knife and a van in the city. 1 man is in police custody. He's currently being detained on suspicion of murder, but counter-terrorism police are involved as well. We will get some clarity on that. And as Mark was saying, we may well get something from the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, soon as well. You can get loads more on this developing story, though, on our website, gbnews.com. It's got all the latest breaking news, best analysis and opinion. And a reminder, yes, that we will be going to that press conference in a matter of moments after 3 people were killed in Nottingham. I'll bring that to you live. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't move.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you're looking at here is live images from inside St Peter's Church in Nottingham, where a vigil is currently taking place after 3 people were killed in the city in the early hours of this morning in a marauding knife and van attack. Hundreds of people have packed into St Peter's Church for this impromptu vigil, where 2 students, so 2 Nottingham University students, have been confirmed as being amongst the dead. Both of those were stabbed to death on Ilkeston Road shortly after 4 o'clock this morning. The Nottingham University Students' Union has come out and confirmed that they were indeed students at that university, and actually as well that they have now cancelled their graduation ball. 2 of the victims of that knife and van rampage were students. The 3rd victim is believed to be a man in his 60s, and it's worth noting as well that, yes, whilst this is, of course, a big university city and that those 2 students were killed, there is another individual here who this vigil is also being held for. We can see flowers being laid at the altar and candles being lit. I just want to remind you, whilst we look at this footage, that in just around 7 minutes' time, I will be taking you live to a police press conference. The latest, as we understand it, is that shortly after 4 o'clock this morning, a man went on a rampage with a knife. He was dressed all in black and carrying a backpack. The knife was described as being larger than a sheet of A4, so a large blade. Witnesses heard blood-curdling screams and saw 2 people, a man and a woman, being repeatedly stabbed. They sadly died at the scene. Eyewitnesses reported that the individual who was believed to be responsible for that attack then walked calmly away. What we then understand happened was a van was used to ram into 3 individuals waiting at a bus stop. One of those people is in a critical condition, the other 2 are stable. And then the body of another man, believed to be this 60-year-old, was found on a road nearby, Magdala Road. And then police arrested a bloke who's 31 years old on suspicion of murder. He was tasered by officers. Eyewitnesses initially reported that they thought they'd heard gunshots. That is unconfirmed as yet. But what you're witnessing there is this vigil for the people who sadly lost their lives in this van and knife attack in the early hours of this morning. Counter-terrorism police are involved at the moment. There have been some raids that have taken place. At least 2 people have been taken away by police as well. I am joined now by GB News' East Midlands reporter Will Hollis, who's been at the scene for us all day where this event has been taking place. I believe I might be able to go to Will Hollis now. There he is. And Will, just explain exactly where you are. There's a police van behind you, there's forensic tents behind you and forensic officers behind you. And this, I think, is the scene where the 3rd body was discovered, yes?
Yes, well, in the timeline of events for the most recent hours, we've had the University of Nottingham confirming that the 2 people that had been killed were students at the University of Nottingham, but the third person that we've been hearing about in slightly lesser circumstances, just because of the announcement that we had from the university, the third person was found here on Magdala Road. Now, this is maybe about a mile or so outside of the city centre. It's a key route for people coming into work in the city centre for their cars, as you can hear them rumbling past as we venture into rush hour. But you can see in the background, this has been one of those really active scenes, particularly for forensic officers. They've been coming and going in their white uniforms, as well as other uniformed police officers. The van that you can see in the background of where I'm standing is it says Tactical Support Group, and it's quite a large police van. Of course, we've had that confirmation from the University of Nottingham that two of the people that were killed were students, and we've been seeing those pictures from St. Peter's Church, which is just inside of the city centre. We've been seeing people laying flowers, and we've been seeing them lighting candles, but we've actually got a quote here from Paul Williams, who's the Bishop of Nottingham and Southwell, who said that it's been a very difficult day for Nottingham. He went on to continue in his words in front of the people that had gathered there at St. Peter's to say it's a truly horrendous, tragic incident, and my heart, my thoughts and my prayers go out to those who are directly affected. The city will share the shock and the dismay of what's happened, and it really has hit the city quite hard. Every conversation that I'm happening to overhear is about what has happened here and how shocking it is, particularly centred around the student community. All of the streets that we've been hearing about today, Ilkeston Road, Magdala Road, Milton Street, they all connect in a bit of a triangle, and it is essentially a triangle around the student community. Of course, though, this isn't just the student population that's been affected. We've heard that another person has been killed. We haven't been given any information to the identities of these people yet, but it is hitting Nottingham really hard that this has happened in their community. Of course, the information about the gentleman who's been arrested, 31, arrested on suspicion of a triple murder here in Nottingham. Police have said that they're working with counter-terrorism officers, but they're saying that they don't believe anybody else was involved, and Nottingham City Council's leader has said that it is safe right now in the city.
Will, thank you very much. That's Will Hollis there from Magdala Road. And what you can see behind Will there is that big police van. There are some forensic tents behind it and police officers busying themselves. That was the scene where that third body was. I'm going to take you now to Nottingham Police's headquarters, Nottinghamshire Central Police Station, where we are expecting a police conference in the next couple of minutes, really. And those are the microphones all laid out as we await to hear from the head of Nottinghamshire Police. Just to give you a recap, it was a major incident this morning. They said that the victims are being supported by specially trained officers. They are not currently looking for anybody else in connection with this arrest. This has just been tweeted by Nottingham Police. It's right in front of me here, so I'm just going to read this to you ahead of the press conference. This is a tweet that has just landed for me here. They are not looking for anyone else in connection with the attacks. The victims are being supported by specially trained officers, and they are working to understand the motives behind these attacks and will keep us updated. And so this is obviously as we await the press conference that's about to take place. A lot of unanswered questions. Counter-terrorism police are involved. There have been other raids. There are increased armed patrols around the streets of Nottingham at the moment. Now, GB News' political editor Darren McCaffrey has been at Westminster for us, and he's getting the political response as well. Rumblings, I believe, that we might hear at some point from the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Darren, I will go to you just before we take that press conference live in a matter of moments. What's the latest political response?
Yeah, indeed. Very good afternoon, Patrick. As you say, we probably will hear from the Home Secretary, given the seriousness of this incident in Nottingham at some point later on. It is also entirely possible that she may well go and visit Nottingham. But what's been notable today is the united front from politicians across the political divide in regards to this incident. It is the same sentiment
about this, Darren McCaffrey. I'm going to have to cut across you very now. Yes, OK. And we're going to go to Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, for a breaking update, I believe. Mark White, I believe, can join us now. as I understand it. He has been outside Nottinghamshire Central Police Station, where we are expecting a news conference to take place any second now. This is, of course, after the sad deaths of 3 individuals, 2 of them students. Mark White joins me now. The latest, please, Mark.
Well, the Chief Constable expected out onto the steps to give that news conference very shortly. But just ahead of that, GB News can confirm from reliable sources that the prime suspect in the fatal stabbing of 3 people and the injury of 3 others in the early hours of this morning is a West African migrant with a history of violence, we're told. As I say, this coming from a very reliable source. We can't go any further at this stage. I think it's unlikely that the Chief Constable will probably be drawn on that aspect. As I say, she's expected out any second now to start speaking. But we are also, in the coming minutes, expecting to hear from the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. But if that is confirmed in the fullness of time that this prime suspect is indeed a migrant, there will be other questions about whether that person is lawfully here, whether that person is an asylum seeker. You'll remember, of course, just back days ago, really, to Annecy in the French Alps. There, of course, it was a case of a Syrian asylum seeker who attacked a group of very small children and 2 adults in a play park in that beautiful resort in the French Alps, and a lot of concern about that particular incident that's still the subject of a detailed investigation. But this particular inquiry, Patrick, we're still in the very early stages, but already some worrying reports coming out that the prime suspect, now in police custody, being investigated for the fatal stabbing of 3 people and the injury, the critical injury of 1 person, less serious injury of 2 others, is a West African migrant who, we're told, has a history of violence.
OK, look, Mark, stay there for me, please. We're about to get a press conference now with the head of Nottingham Police on this issue. But, Mark, if people are just joining us right now ahead of that press conference, that breaking news line, again, just to emphasise, Mark, what is it? As you understand from, you say, reliable sources. Go on.
Yes, an impeccable source telling GB News, telling us that they have been told that the man who is in custody, this 31-year-old who was arrested, tasered by his van that was caught exclusively on video and handed to GB News earlier this morning, that man is a West African migrant with a history of violence. Any more detail on the status of that individual we don't have at this time. He could, of course, and may well very likely be in this country lawfully and legitimately. He may be an asylum seeker. He may be an illegal immigrant. You know, we don't know that. What we can say for sure at this hour from our sources is that he is a West African migrant, came to the UK, who's clearly moved and settled up here for a period of time. But this man, worryingly again, according to our sources, has a history of other violent incidents that he has been involved in previously.
Yeah, Mark, this will raise huge amounts of questions for everybody, which, look, we may well get answered at this police press conference behind you. We will also be hearing, hopefully at some point, from our Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, potentially people's worst fears coming true here, Mark, which is, an individual from a different country with a history of violence, tragically wreaking havoc on the streets of Britain.
Yes, I mean, we should always, just take a step back and with all of these incidents and tragedies, remember there are plenty of people in this country who are born and bred in the UK that are more than capable and regularly do commit absolutely atrocious crimes. But I think the difference with the issue around migration is that there are certain protocols and safeguards that we expect those in charge of this country to go through in allowing people into the UK, certain background checks like they do in the United States, a detailed background check on someone's criminal history of offending, to determine whether these are the right types of people that we want in this country and whether they could potentially pose a threat. That is always a live issue in those who have to deal with the issue of immigration day in, day out. It is of deep concern to people in this country because they see, in terms of uncontrolled migration, illegal migration across the English Channel. And again, yesterday, another 545 people arrived in 11 boats across the Channel. People are concerned that we don't have a handle on who these individuals are, what their offending behaviour may have been in the past, because so many of them just throw away their identifying documents, and that makes it much more difficult for the authorities to get a handle on exactly who they are. Now, we're not saying at all that that's the case with this individual. We don't know that. All we can confirm through our sources is the news that this man is a West African migrant, and that, more worryingly, there is a history there of violence in this young man. He's only 31, but a history of violence in this young man's past. Now, was that brought to UK authorities' attention before he entered this country at whatever point he did? That will have to come in the fullness of time, and it will no doubt be questions that Suella Braverman, as the Home Secretary, will be presented with, Patrick. She is giving that statement on camera. Like this statement from the Chief Constable, I don't expect it to be a very detailed statement that goes to all of these concerns that are now starting to emerge and being raised, but certainly questions that will have to be answered in the fullness of time.
Mark, thank you. Just stay with us if that's OK. Again, I just want to emphasise this is a fast-paced breaking news story. And Mark White, our Home and Security editor, has been all over this for us from the start. And if you are just joining me, what Mark has said right here on this show is that, according to impeccable sources, an impeccable source, the suspect, a 31-year-old man who was tasered by police. In fact, we have exclusive footage of this arrest taking place. GB News is the only news outlet with this footage. So I would quite like to just play the footage at some point here, but he is believed to be a West African migrant with a history of violence. As Mark was identifying there, some pertinent questions which will have to be raised, which is, was this history known to authorities? What you are now looking at on your screens is GB News exclusive footage of this individual, a 31-year-old man, being tasered and arrested by officers. Behind him is a van, and that van, as we understand it, was used to ram into 3 individuals at a bus stop. There is significant denting and damage to the front of that van, which would be consistent with what we understand happened at that bus stop. 2 people, 2 university students on their way home from a night out, young university students, were stabbed repeatedly to death in the early hours of this morning, and then another man was stabbed to death as well later on. I'm going to go back to Mark White now, Home and Security Editor. Mark, the latest.
Well, we are now waiting for Nottinghamshire's Chief Constable to come out and give us an update on the investigation from her side. We heard in a statement earlier, she spoke of the shock, understandably, that's been felt in the community here. The fact that at this stage they are working with counter-terrorism police, the regional counter-terrorism branch for this part of England, as they piece together exactly what happened. There's nothing that we understand specifically pointing to a terrorist motivation at this stage, but she said, as you would understand, given the circumstances of this attack, an attack involving multiple stabbing incidents and also people being run over by a van to, in one person's case, critical injury, it is absolutely something that the counter-terrorism police are being called in to help to delve deeper into this man's background to determine if there is any links to any known extremist, international terrorism, whatever that might be. As I say, at this stage, it's still being led by Nottinghamshire Police and not by the Counter-Terrorism Command, but that could all change in the hours and the days ahead. So as I say, there's a very significant, in fact, we just give you a shot, you've been seeing a shot looking at the door. These are the cameras that are pointed, Patrick, towards the door. Everybody, as always, with an incident like this, descending on this town, this city, to report on the very latest happenings, and you know, some real concern, understandably, being felt right around the country.
Look, Mark, thank you very, very much. There's Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, who brought us that big breaking news line that, according to impeccable sources, the suspect involved in this triple killing on the streets of Nottingham is a West African migrant with a history of violence. I'm going to leave Mark there for a second because he's going to get set up to bring us this news press conference, this police press conference that we should be getting in a matter of moments. Now, bear in mind that press conference was due to have happened around 10 minutes ago. Mark White brings us this breaking line shortly before we were waiting to hear from the police chief there in Nottingham, and I wonder if that has delayed things slightly. Mark White, of course, has got an impeccable history when it comes to bringing big, exclusive breaking stories like this, and so will have managed to get that information before anybody else. I'm also reading reports from another well-placed GB News source. Nottingham Police to give a news conference here, and this source says to me, trust me, having spoken to very well-placed police sources, the identity, origin and history of the individual involved is going to take this story to a whole new level. It's worth noting about what the effects of the criminality involved here were, and I will take you live now to a vigil at St Peter's Church in Nottingham. Earlier this morning at 4 a.m, two students, young students, on their way back celebrating their end-of-year night out, were brutally and mercilessly stabbed to death on the streets by a man dressed all in black, a man now believed to be a West African migrant with a history of violence. He was wearing a backpack at the time, and local residents, eyewitnesses reported seeing an incredibly large knife. There was then another incident in this marauding attack involving a van and 3 individuals at a bus stop. One of those individuals remains in a critical condition. There was then another incident involving a man believed to be in his 60s, who was also stabbed to death on a street nearby. The police were called. They were at the scenes of all of these separate incidents quickly. They cordoned off vast areas of the city. Those cordons remain in place. Forensic evidence is being obtained, but they did manage to eventually get this guy out of the van, drag him to the street and taser him. What you're looking at there is a vigil from inside St Peter's Church in Nottingham, where mostly students, mostly what appear to be students anyway, in this big student city, have been gathering to pay their respects. And the reason why you're seeing people coming in and out is that there are so many people wanting to attend this vigil, to lay flowers, to pay their respects, and to leave little messages and notes and to light candles, that they're taking it in shifts at this church. But we were wondering, weren't we, for a long time, why are counter-terrorism police getting involved in this? It did look a little bit, did it not have the hallmarks of some kind of marauding terror attack? It's important to stress police are still not calling this a terror attack. But when we saw that counter-terrorism police were getting involved and that armed officers were raiding other houses, I think it was reasonable to suspect that there appeared to be a little bit more to this attack, potentially, than maybe originally met the eye. And as Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, has been discussing with us right now, the suspect is believed to be a West African migrant with a history of violence. We are expecting a police press conference any second now from outside Nottinghamshire County Police headquarters. As you can see there, the real-world impacts, frankly, of what will have been a lot of people's worst-case scenario. And these people, these two students who were knifed to death on the streets of Nottingham, were just 5 minutes from home. And that's according to some of their friends. Nottingham University have cancelled their graduation ball, and there is a vigil being held at St Peter's Church right now as we speak. I'm going back to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who brought us that big breaking news story that the suspect is believed to be a West African migrant with a history of violence. And Mark, as you were talking about, this will lead to serious questions now over what the police knew and what the authorities knew about this individual's history and about, frankly, his resident status in the country as well.
Yes, and understandably so. It's always a balancing act that the authorities have to try to get right in letting anyone into the UK, and the same with other countries around the world. No one in officialdom wants to let people into this country who may potentially pose a threat to the population. Now, the fact that this person had a history of violence is emerging now. How readily was that information available to those who were allowing this person in? How did this person enter the country in the first place is the other question among many that we need answered at this stage, because all that we have been able to glean from our source is that, yes, this is a West African migrant with a history of violence, that we don't know any more about this. Our source was trying to get to the bottom of whether this person had a legal right to be in the United Kingdom. In other words, did they enter illegally? Have they stayed past? In fact, I'm told it looks like he's the Chief Constable now.
That's OK, yeah. Mark White, thank you very much. What we're going to do is we're going to take you live now to this press conference outside Nottingham Police headquarters.
There has been a shocking and tragic series of events which has led to the lives of 3 innocent people being taken and left another member of the public in a critical condition in hospital. My thoughts are with all the families affected by this horrific incident, and we are working extremely hard to try and understand exactly what has happened. I can tell you that a 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in police custody. We are not looking for anyone else in connection with the attacks, and I can reassure the public that it is safe to visit the city centre. There may be some road restrictions in place as we continue to establish exactly what has happened. Police were called to Ilkeston Road just after 4 a.m. after a member of the public reported that 2 people aged 19 had been stabbed and were unresponsive. We had a further call to another incident in Milton Street, where the driver of a stolen van had attempted to run over 3 people. As a result, 1 man is in hospital in a critical condition, while 2 others are believed to have suffered minor injuries. The van was then stopped on Maple Street, where a man was tasered and detained by police officers on suspicion of murder. A man in his 50s was also found dead from knife injuries in Magdala Road by a member of the public. At the moment, we believe that the suspect has stolen this man's vehicle and driven it to Milton Street, where he is then driven at members of the public. We are still in the early stages of the investigation and need to determine exactly what the motives were behind this attack. We are keeping an open mind and are working closely with counter-terrorism policing to establish the facts, as we would normally do in this type of circumstances. The families of all the victims have been informed and are being supported by specially trained officers. Officers have also carried out a number of searches at addresses across the city to gather evidence, but no further arrests have been made. A team of dedicated detectives are investigating the circumstances surrounding the incident and will continue to gather evidence over the coming days. I want to thank those who live and work in our city for their patience and understanding in incredibly difficult circumstances. We will, of course, keep the public updated as soon as we are able to say anything further. This is a very sad day for our city, and we will do everything possible to get justice for the victims and their families. Thank you.
OK, all right. So what you just heard there was a very brief, it must be said, statement from Nottinghamshire County Police. I'm going to bring Mark White back in a second, who was seeing that live. Is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. What the police were saying there was that they're keeping an open mind about the attack. They were called initially after 2 people were stabbed to death in the street. Then what they just said there was that there was an individual in his 50s who died from knife wounds. As they understand it, that individual's van was then stolen by the man believed to be responsible for these attacks, who is a 31-year-old man who remains in custody, and then that van was used to career into a few other people before eventually an arrest was made. They wanted to emphasise that they are not looking for anyone else in connection with this attack, that no further arrests have been made, and that it is safe to visit the city centre again, which really kind of emphasises, doesn't it? I think that they believe clearly that they've got their man. Mark White does join me now, again, our Home and Security editor. Mark, quite a short statement there.
Yes, but that new piece of information, key information that we hadn't had before, wondering, of course, whether this van was a van that was owned by the suspect. Now clear it wasn't. It was this man in his 50s who appears to have been the third person to have been stabbed to death by this alleged attacker. And at that point, it's believed the suspect stole this victim's van, which he then used, of course, to carry out the attacks further into Nottingham city centre on Milton Street, where three people were run over, one of those still in hospital with critical injuries. So that a key piece of new information. What the Chief Constable didn't touch on, and perhaps not surprisingly at this stage anyway, is the information that we have, that we can confirm that the suspect, the 31-year-old who was taken from that van, tasered and arrested, is a West African migrant with a history of violence. Now, beyond that, we don't know. We don't know if this is someone who was lawfully in the UK, whether it was someone who had overstayed his visa, whether he had entered illegally, where he was an asylum seeker. We don't know any of that. All we can confirm from our source, a source that I have great confidence in, is that this individual is a West African migrant with a history of violence. The Home Secretary is due to give a statement on camera soon. Whether she touches on this at this stage, I don't know, but she will definitely, of course, be asked about that in the hours and days ahead, because it is a very significant aspect of this story, given all of the questions that there will inevitably be about how someone with a history of violence was allowed into the UK in the first place.
That is the key piece of information which we appear to have exclusively here on GB News, thanks to Mark White, our Home and Security editor, from an impeccable source, which is that the individual who's been held in police custody is believed to be a West African migrant with a history of violence, which would, I think, go a long way to explaining exactly why as well. Emmanuel Macron was very, very quick to do a tweet of support as well. It did make it, I think, appear like there was going to be something a bit more to come out about this, and indeed there has been. I'm going to reiterate a statement made just now by Nottinghamshire Police Chief Constable Kate Maynell, who said this: police were called to Ilkeston Road after two 19-year-olds were found stabbed shortly after 4 a.m. They have now been confirmed as University of Nottingham students. A vigil is being held for them at St Peter's Church. She went on to say officers had a further call to Milton Street following reports a van had tried to run over 3 people. As a result, one man is in hospital in a critical condition while others were left with minor injuries. The van was then stopped on Maple Street, where a man was tasered by police and taken into custody. And this is also a new piece of information. A man in his 50s was also found dead from knife injuries at Magdala Road by a member of the public. At the moment, we believe the suspect has stolen this vehicle, then driven it at members of the public. So, Mark, the latest information emerging is of a stabbing, the theft of a van, the murder of another man, and then the attempted murder, it would appear, of other individuals as well. And the man responsible for this, as far as the police are aware, is that migrant who has got a history of violence. Those are the facts as we understand them, Mark.
Those, at least the facts with regard to this man's origin and the history of violence, are facts that we are confirming. The police have not confirmed those facts as yet. They will of course be under pressure now because other members of the media will be contacting them with those very same questions, because clearly it raises a whole host of other very legitimate concerns that need to be answered, that will, I'm sure, be answered in the fullness of time. But they will now be under pressure to give some kind of confirmation on the background of this individual. And as you mentioned there, Patrick, I think we both thought it was perhaps a little odd that Emmanuel Macron was commenting on this, although having said that, you know, our Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary did offer their support and sympathies following the attack in Annecy in the French Alps last week, when a number of very young children were stabbed by a Syrian asylum seeker and 2 adults as well. So it may be that he was privy to a bit more information. You would expect, as the head of state of our close neighbour across the English Channel there, that of course they're kept up to date and up to speed with events like this as well. So maybe that prompted that reciprocal message of support to the UK following the message of support from the UK to him last week.
Now, what Mark has been alluding to as well, which is something that we are expecting to take in just a few moments' time, so stay tuned for this, which is potentially a statement from Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary. I'm just going to remind you of what she tweeted earlier today, in light, so I think it's worth reminding ourselves of this, in light of the developments that our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, has brought us. So this was just several hours ago. Suella Braverman said, "I am shocked and saddened that 3 people have lost their lives today in Nottingham. My thoughts are with those affected by this incident. I've spoken to Nottingham Police, Chief Constable, and I'm receiving regular updates. I'm thankful to the emergency services for their response." Well, what has happened since then is that there's been a police press conference. At that press conference, it was confirmed that 2 19-year-olds and a man in his 50s were killed with a knife in Nottingham. There was also a van taken, and the individual who took that van tried to drive that at people waiting at a bus stop. One of those individuals is still in a critical condition. As it stands, 3 people dead, 1 person in critical condition, 2 other people injured and in hospital receiving treatment. Counter-terrorism police were involved. They were told that they're keeping an open mind about this. The latest from Nottinghamshire Police is that they are keeping an open mind about this. But Mark White, our Home Security Editor, was emphasising there that he says that we have an impeccable source which says that the individual involved in this is a West African man, 31 years old, who's a migrant into this country, who has got a history of violence. The police are yet to confirm that. But clearly now they will be under a lot of pressure to do so, or otherwise, as Mark White has revealed that to us. There is a vigil taking place at the moment for those 2 teenagers and the 50-year-old man who were killed. It's worth noting as well that those 2 19-year-olds were just walking home from a night out, celebrating the end of their university year. And what eyewitnesses said that they heard was, out of nowhere, a lot of screaming, blood-curdling screams, people calling for help, and a man dressed all in black, carrying a rucksack, wielding a very large knife, repeatedly stabbing those individuals on the street. Then the police attended very quickly after that. There is then, of course, another stabbing and a van being stolen and attempted to be driven into other people, and one other person remains in a critical condition. I'm just going to reiterate exactly what the police statement has said. They said that their investigation is still in the early stages and that they are keeping an open mind as to what the motive for the attack may have been. But Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, is confident, incredibly confident with the sources that he has at his disposal, which is that the individual in police custody is a 31-year-old West African man with a history of violence. Michelle Dewberry joins me now. Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody at home, absolutely shocked, absolutely saddened. Any second now, I will be bringing you the update from Suella Braverman, our Home Secretary, in response to this incident. What is this world coming to? You cannot even go to a nightclub and get home safely. Lawless Britain. How are you feeling at home tonight? I feel absolutely sickened, of course, the thoughts with everybody, but stand by, Suella Braverman, literally about to speak in response to this. So thank you, Patrick, for your coverage so far. But ladies and gents, we can bring you now Suella Braverman in reaction to this.
First of all, I want to say how shocked and saddened I am that 3 people have lost their lives earlier today in Nottingham, and that further individuals have been injured in this tragic incident. My thoughts, first and foremost, are with all of those who have been involved, their friends, their families, and their communities. I want to thank the emergency services for their rapid response. They're working round the clock to keep people safe, and we're incredibly grateful for all of their efforts. The police are at an early stage of their investigation right now. They've got to carry out a lot of work to determine the precise motive behind this incident. I'm in regular contact with the Chief Constable of Nottinghamshire Police, but I want to take this opportunity to urge anybody who has any information about this incident to come forward and report it to the police.
Nottinghamshire Police have said they were working alongside counter-terrorism police on this. Is there anything at this stage to suggest that this could be a terror-related incident?
We're in a very early stage of the investigation. We need to allow the police the time and the space to carry out all of their operational activity to determine the motive. It's right that Nottinghamshire Police are working with counter-terrorism policing, but it's also fair to say that everybody and all professionals on the front line are keeping an open mind as to what the precise motive might have been.
Do the police know who they're dealing with in terms of the suspect? I mean, do they know who they have in custody, and do they know who the victims are and whether there is any link between them?
There are some things we do know right now. We obviously know that, sadly, tragically, 3 people have been killed. We know that a knife has been used in some of those killings, and a suspect has been arrested on suspicion of murder by Nottinghamshire Police.
Goodness gracious me, it's absolutely sickening and shocking, isn't it? Do not go anywhere. We're going to have all of the latest on this. Mark White will join me in just a second. But before we get into that, let's get ourselves up to speed with all the latest headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you. Well, let's bring you up to date.